Chapter 1357. That person still hadn't walked out from the shadows of the stairs, and the man in the white suit frowned for some reason. At the same time, "Old man, I told you that I would find you." Not far away, Miss Spirit, which landed in front of the castle's gate after a few leaps. On her high heels, a pair of small green wing-shaped air masses disappeared the moment she landed. "Do you think you can escape?" After landing, the spirit which rushed to the man in the white suit. "Farrell." She grabbed his collar with both hands and said angrily, "Ungrateful bastard." Farrell's eyes suddenly turned cold. Miss Witch, whose anger was immediately extinguished, felt her heart skip a beat. She gave up on grabbing Farrell's collar and looked around, the castle in front of her. "This place. I think I've seen it in a magazine before." Miss Spirit, which was not trying to change the topic. She really felt like she had seen this place before. After entering the inhuman domain, through the coordinates, she had been chasing Farrell all the way. She did not have time to determine her specific location. She only knew that she was in a chaotic area. Wait, this place seems to be... Miss Spirit Witch's doubts were soon solved. She found the information that matched this place from her memory, especially when she saw the huge oil painting in front of the castle hall. She could not help but swallow her saliva and subconsciously looked at Farrell beside her. Farrell looked at the figure on the stairs and said calmly, "As you thought, this is Duke Roland's castle." "Duke Roland?" Miss Spirit Witch gasped. "The last sword saint of France?" Miss Spirit Witch suddenly looked at the figure hiding in the shadows of the stairs. Her expression changed slightly. The information about this Duke Roland flashed through her mind. The last sword saint of France, the legendary hero of the Great War 100 years ago, the owner of the Holy Sword, Joyeuse, and the Black Dragon Knight. According to legend, he was the descendant of the royal family of the Carolingian dynasty, the honorary president of the Inhuman Domain Swordsmanship Association. The last sword saint, Duke Roland, was much more famous in the Inhuman Domain than the most evil knight in history, Farrell. He was a legendary hero that Miss Spirit, which had heard about since she was a child. At this moment, even someone as bold as the witch who had freed Farrell from the knight's prison couldn't help but feel nervous. "You're not Roland. Who are you?" But at this moment, Farlier's brows were furrowed, or rather, his gaze was a bit more serious. Finally, the figure on the stairs came down again and slowly emerged from the shadows. Are you here to find my grandfather?" Her voice was a little timid. She was hugging a pillow that was the same height as her. She didn't seem to be good at communicating. In fact, he did look like the type who was not good at communicating with others. Miss Witch could not help but open her mouth slightly. Miss Spirit Witch's eyes, Miss Spirit Witch, Miss Spirit Witch, Spirit Witch. Furthermore, it was a woman. What a cruel thing to do. The witch quickly restrained her sympathy because this woman claimed to be the granddaughter of Duke Roland. Naturally, she was also a princess that she could not afford to offend. "Are you Roland's granddaughter?" Farrell looked at the girl with a strange gaze. His gaze made the girl, who had an unusually large body, lower her head. "Where's Roland?" Farrell suddenly asked. Hearing this, the granddaughter of the sword saint revealed a trace of sadness. "My grandfather passed away a year ago. Do you have any business with him?" "Wait, Duke Roland is dead?" Miss Witch was stunned and asked in disbelief. "What is this? Why have I never heard of such a big thing?" Farrell remained silent. No one knew what he was thinking. The sword saint's granddaughter timidly said, because it wasn't publicized, the funeral was only conducted by the Radiance Tower Master and Lord Kaloya. "Where is his grave?" At this moment, Farlier took a deep breath. "Take me to take a look. I once fought alongside him." "You are?" The granddaughter of the sword saint opened her mouth in surprise. "We can barely be considered as former comrades." The granddaughter of the sword saint could not help but reveal a puzzled expression. However, she seemed to be the type to easily believe others, or perhaps she had other thoughts in her mind. So she said, "Sir, if you want to pay your respects, it may be a little troublesome." Farrell could not help but look puzzled. "You, come with me first." The girl with an unusually large body sighed and said, "Duke Roland's grave was in a courtyard behind the ancient castle. Because the ghost had been taking care of it for a long time, the roses here were not only blooming brilliantly, but also quite neat. Just like this, the courtyard seemed to be a quiet place, but this was under the premise of ignoring a huge statue in the middle of the courtyard. A dragon. Miss Witch looked up at the huge figure that was nearly 20 meters tall and could not help but exclaim. Although it was just a statue, it constantly emitted a terrifying aura. At this moment, Farrell also looked up at it. The granddaughter of the Sword Saint looked at the two of them and said carefully, "This is my grandfather's most cherished companion. After my grandfather was buried here, it automatically turned into a statue and guarded this place. Any stranger who wants to come close will be attacked by it. No wonder you led us to this place so easily." Miss Witch looked at the granddaughter of the Sword Saint and said indifferently. The granddaughter of the Sword Saint did not reply at this moment, and no one knew what she was thinking. At this moment, Farrell walked directly toward the grave. However, the moment he stepped into the courtyard, the ground of the courtyard shook slightly. The eyes of the huge, ancient dragon statue suddenly opened, and a pair of lifelike huge eyeballs looked down at him. Giant dragons, in the inhuman realm, they were only legends and were usually very difficult to meet. Even the Golden Dragon, who was watched by the Magician Association and became famous because of its constant search for partners, was protected by the biology department of the Magician Association. It was difficult for ordinary people to see it. The moment the eyes of the statue opened, countless cracks appeared on the body of the statue. Then, the statue shattered, and a strong wind spread out, accompanied by a roar toward the sky. What appeared in front of everyone was a huge black dragon with claws and fangs. Its wings were spread out, and it was very powerful. Its scales were shining with black light. "Old man, be careful," Miss Witch blurted out. Under the gaze of this huge black dragon, Farrell walked directly to Duke Roland's grave. The moment he stood before the grave, the huge black dragon suddenly lowered its head, opened its huge bloody mouth, and roared at Farrell again. The evilest knight in history suddenly punched the black dragon's forehead. This punch was so loud that it could shake the surroundings. It was even louder than the roar of the huge dragon. The ground outside the courtyard suddenly cracked, but the courtyard was not damaged at all. After taking the punch, the black dragon directly fell to the ground and saw stars. "Ajuin, I'm just here to see Roland, not to fight." Farrell stared at the black dragon's eyes expressionlessly. "But if you don't wake up, I don't mind beating you up so that you can remember who I am." "You've already beaten me up. Don't tell me until you've beaten me up." Miss Witch cursed in her heart. When she turned to look at the granddaughter of the Sword Saint, she found that the granddaughter's mouth was wide open as if she had seen a ghost. The granddaughter of the Sword Saint stiffly turned around and looked at Miss Witch. "Who is he?" Miss Witch cleared her throat and then said seriously, "Mordred, the knight in the Great War 100 years ago. Do you know him?" "Mordred, him?" The granddaughter of the Sword Saint opened her eyes wide. "He's the lunatic that Grandpa mentioned." "Sure." Miss Witch suddenly strode forward and hurriedly covered the chubby girl's mouth with her hand. Then, she carefully stared at Farrell in front of the grave and felt relieved when she saw that he didn't respond. At this time, the black dragon lying on the ground with its tongue out, Ajuin's body emitted a faint light. Then, its body shrunk little by little and finally turned into a black-haired young man. There was a cross-shaped wound on its cheek, right on the bridge of its nose. At this time, the young man rubbed his head and showed a pained expression, as if he had seen a ghost. "Do you remember now?" Farrell casually glanced at the black dragon in human form. Black dragon Ajuin in front of him stood up with a vigilant expression. "You lunatic! You're not dead yet. Weren't you captured and locked up?" Farrell didn't explain this matter and directly asked, "How did Roland die?" "His lifespan was up, so he naturally died." The black dragon shook its head. "Aren't humans that fragile? With Roland's bodily functions, it's not impossible for him to die of old age, but it would take at least 100 or 200 years. Farrell coldly snorted. "I'm not dead, so he naturally won't die either. He died of illness." Black dragon Ajuin impatiently stated another reason. Farrell raised his eyebrows, and a violent and crazy aura suddenly swept through the entire courtyard. The black dragon youth in front of him couldn't help but slightly change his expression, but it seemed that he didn't intend to say yes. He just gritted his teeth and showed a fearless attitude. God knew why his legs were slightly trembling at this moment. However, Farrell did not make a move. He maintained his terrifying aura and remained motionless. All of a sudden, Farrell's figure flashed, but he did not attack the black dragon. Instead, he attacked the granddaughter of the Sword Saint who was standing beside the witch. He also punched out. This punch could directly beat the black dragon to the ground, but now it was aimed at a delicate, a girl. It was easy to imagine the result. "Old man, you're crazy again." At this moment, the granddaughter of the Sword Saint looked at the approaching fist and seemed to be completely stunned. She was so scared that she didn't move. The fist finally stopped in front of the granddaughter of the Sword Saint. It was about 2 inches away. Farrell didn't retract his arm, but just stared at her and asked in a low voice, "Have you finished learning Roland's Sword Saint technique?" The granddaughter of the Sword Saint seemed to have just reacted. "Ah, what did you say? Oh, sorry, I didn't mean it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." He saw a long sword pointing straight from bottom to top. The tip of the sword was pointing at Farrell's throat. It was about 1 inch away. The granddaughter of the Sword Saint seemed to be unaware of this. She panicked and directly dropped the long sword in her hand. However, she still tightly held the pillow in her hand and kept apologizing. "Ha ha!" Black Dragon Ajuin suddenly held his stomach and laughed loudly. He pointed at Farrell and mocked. "Are you defeated? Old lunatic." Even when Law was still alive, he was defeated by Leia's swordsmanship. "You deserve it." Farrell didn't look angry at all. He directly grabbed the granddaughter of the Sword Saint, Leia's wrist, and said seriously, "Very good. You're much better than those useless fellows from the Night Mechanical Engineers. You barely qualify. I want you. Come with me." Where were we going?" The granddaughter of the Sword Saint suddenly panicked. Give me some time to prepare. So fast. What's going on?" Miss Witch obviously didn't know how to react. At this time, Farrell directly grabbed Leia's wrist. After a flash, he appeared beside the black dragon and directly pinched the back of the dragon's neck with his palm. After a painful howl, the black dragon's body suddenly enlarged and directly returned to the body of a black dragon. Farrell, who was standing directly on the black dragon's neck, still had his palm pressed against the back of the black dragon's neck. "Go to the Magician Association. I want to see Hui Yao." "Old lunatic, what right do you have to ride on me?" The black dragon was unwilling to agree and twisted his body wildly in the air. "Disobedient? Then I'll make the black dragon race extinct." It stopped. The black dragon's twisting stopped at once. It said fiercely, "Listen, I just don't want you to be in Leia's hands. This is a strategic compromise. Don't be too proud." It roared unwillingly, spread its wings, and was about to fly away from this ancient castle. "Old man, you want to run away again?" Miss Witch saw this and stomped her feet. The emerald green wings on her high heels spread out again, and then she quickly jumped onto the black dragon's back. She smiled sweetly and said, "Sorry to disturb you." Another one, the Toridu clan. In front of the cliff, the master of the Radiance Tower and Kelowna's Shinryu, as well as the little butterfly holding a golden apple, were overlooking the ruins of the castle, surrounded by the cliff in the distance. The vampires were busy moving the rubble that could no longer be used like bees. From the looks of it, Fafnir must have caused a ruckus here. The master of the Radiance Tower sighed softly and naturally looked at Kelowna's Shinryu. "Well, this guy is quite energetic." Kelowna's Shinryu nodded. "The effect of this medicine is really good. I'll get some more for you later. It's a gift in return." Hearing this, the little butterfly holding the apple couldn't help blushing. "Get some more? Is he going to do that kind of comfortable thing again?" Chapter 1358. After avoiding the topic of the Golden Dragon destroying the castle of the Torito clan, the Shinryu of Kelowna lit a cigarette to calm herself down. Then, she suddenly asked, "Aren't you going to take care of that little guy called Secret Steel?" Calling him a little guy was fine. After all, the Shinryu of Kelowna was much younger than her. Regarding this, the first Tower Master, Hui Yao, did not have any objection. However, he shook his head and said, the relationship between the Tower Masters is not that of a superior and a subordinate. Strictly speaking, we are all companions who pursue the pinnacle of magic. Since Secret Steel came here without notifying us, he probably has his own reasons. I know him better than anyone else. If there's a need, he won't hide it from us. Is that so? Long Shiro nodded. She blew on the cigarette and said casually, "You're so trusting." The Tower Master of the Radiance Tower smiled and said, "Probably, I'm the kind of person who trusts others easily. Besides, humans are always suspicious." Little brat. Long Shiro looked at her with disdain, but she thought that she was similar to her in some matters. So, she put out the cigarette and said, "What are you going to do now? Fafnir seems to have disappeared around here. You don't want to see Secret Steel, either. You can't just stay here. Let me tell you, my time is very precious. Every minute is worth hundreds of thousands of secret crystals. Teacher, if you need it, I still have some in my private vault this year," the Tower Master of the Radiance Tower said softly. "All right, I'll stay here." The Tower Master of the Radiance Tower looked at the busy vampires in front of her. Then, she looked at the bottomless abyss below and frowned. It's strange. Not long ago, that thing's reaction seemed to have suddenly disappeared. That thing? Long Shou imitated Hui Yao's action and looked at the crack of the abyss below. Speaking of which, the inhuman territory wasn't something that the Shinryu Kelowna was afraid of. After all, she had lost the support of Kelowna in this place, and there was no such thing as unlimited stamina. One of the things he was afraid of was the Tower Master of the Radiance Tower, who had an ill-fated master-disciple relationship with him many years ago. This guy knew his weakness all too well. The other thing was that there was something beneath the 13 clans. Whenever the Shinryu explored the inhuman domain, he could vaguely sense that there was something terrifying beneath the Lost Rift. The size of that thing should be beyond the limits of this world. In Eastern vernacular, they were obviously immortals who could have ascended thousands of years ago, but they refused to leave, and so on. It wasn't that she hadn't thought of going over to investigate a few times, but due to various reasons she hadn't done so. Should she take advantage of this opportunity? Long Shou secretly glanced at Hui Yao and finally gave up on the idea. Who knew what kind of strange things would happen if she went down to explore this time? The Shinryu Kelowna always felt that he had something against the inhuman territory. Indeed, teacher should know that I have the ability to gather information about the inhuman territory. The Tower Master of the Radiance Tower nodded firmly. All these years, the 13 clans have been using this sacred blood ritual to awaken the thing hidden in the abyss. In recent years, I've begun to feel that the consciousness of the thing below is getting stronger and stronger. But now it's strange. Isn't that a good thing? Long Shou shrugged and said, "There are fewer troublesome things, and we're free now. We don't have to worry about how it disappeared." The Tower Master of the Radiance Tower smiled bitterly and said, "The management here is slightly different from teachers. I can't be like teacher in the East, where all the Inhumans are in awe of him. Should I say that there are too many beliefs here? Or because there are too many beliefs, it has become a land of no beliefs?" With that, Hui Yao gently tapped the super long magic wand in his hand on the ground, and then he opened a rectangular spell on the ground. He closed his eyes. After a while, he opened his eyes and said, "Finally, I've found the specific location of Fafnir." "Oh, have you found it?" Long Shou suddenly became spirited. "Where is it?" The Tower Master of the Radiance Tower looked a little surprised and said, "It seems to be near Torito's farm." "Farm?" The little butterfly monster blinked and asked curiously, "Sister Long, do vampires also need to farm?" Long Shou sneered and said, "The concept of a vampire's farm is different from the one you know. You'll be surprised later." The Tower Master of the Radiance Tower once again tapped the ground with his magic wand and interrupted, "Let's move over. If Fafnir destroys the clan's farm, it will be more serious than destroying the place where they live. Longshaw said disdainfully, only you can allow such a farm to exist. Hui Yao could only smile bitterly and said, we can't let the 13 clans set their sights on the modern world. A hungry vampire can do anything. Now, most of them can be placed in the inhuman territory. This price is already reasonable. Kelowna's Shinryu did not express his opinion again. Then, he said indifferently, you have to think about it carefully. This kind of peace may not last long. The development brought by peace will soon reach the limit of what this place can bear. Once this territory is broken, you may not be so lucky as to be able to find another destroyed kingdom of God to build anew in human territory. Hui Yao's expression changed. Teacher knows, Longshaw said indifferently. I can feel it. The space structure here is a little unstable. Indeed, Hui Yao sighed and said, there are more and more changes recently. It should be soon. As he spoke, the teleportation spell was fully activated. A stream of light flashed, and they disappeared from the cliff. After that, their conversation was cut off. After the group of people entered the farm, Luaccio and the others were settled in a small villa at the edge of the farm town by Mr. Vampire. After that, Mr. Vampire left with the crop girl Mina. He said that he would send her back to the place where she used to live and ask them to rest and wait in the villa. Suddenly, only Boss Luo and his servant, the golden dragon who changed his name to Milo-chan, and Teresa, who is currently a human, were left in the villa. There was not even a single vampire patrolling around the villa. However, there were many ingredients that were suitable for human consumption in the villa. Moreover, they were all fresh. When Boss Luo was at the bottom of the crack, he said that he wanted to eat Miss Maid's dinner. Therefore, after Mr. Vampire left, Miss Maid directly walked into the kitchen with the ingredients and soon came out with exquisite delicacies. As for Huang Jinlong, he took advantage of this period of time and discovered a huge bathhouse in the villa. He was already planning how to take a bath with the beauty. When he thought of the exciting plot, Huang Jinlong immediately had 2 lines of nosebleeds. As for the problem of suppressing the gun, it did not exist. Delicious. It's really great. Although the appearance of the food on the table was enough to give a high score, when it entered her mouth, the moment it exploded in her mouth, Teresa could not help but exclaim in surprise. Speaking of which, Miss Teresa, has Miss Maria woken up yet? Boss Luo put down his hands in front of the table and asked. Teresa shook her head. I have a feeling that sister is sleeping very soundly this time. I have never experienced such a situation before. However, I can feel that she is very safe. It was probably because of the heavy mental burden of expelling the vengeful spirit that invaded her body. Although some of it was due to Miss Maid's whispered reminder that forced her own potential. However, there was no hurry to wake Maria up. Although the original intention of this trip was to find Huang Jinlong and solve the problem of Huang Jinlong's fertility problem, they should not stay here. But Huang Jinlong was here. He always felt that something interesting would happen. Therefore, Boss Luo did not intend to point it out. After a simple dinner, Huang Jinlong rushed out of the dining room directly. No one knew what he was doing. Not long after, Huang Jinlong, who was wrapped in a bath towel, gently pushed open the door of the living room. Well, I found a nice bathhouse. Where's the beauty? In the living room. Only Teresa was left. She sat on the sofa and read the Inhuman newspaper with great interest. Although she had never walked in the inhuman domain with her own consciousness, her sister Maria had shown her some of this kind of newspaper in the modern world. Every time he looked at this kind of magical moving newspaper, he had a strange feeling about Teresa's arrival. They went out. Teresa raised her head at this time. They said that they're going for a walk after dinner. As for the bath, I also want to take a bath. Oh, go ahead. Huang Jinlong shook his head, turned around, closed the door, and left. Then, Teresa heard a vulgar word coming from outside the living room. Then, the whole villa shook violently. Teresa rushed out of the living room in a panic. She saw that the corridor outside had cracked, and then the walls had turned black. In addition, there was a big hole in the ceiling. This Milo-chan seemed to have disappeared. A stream of light flashed. The master of the Radiance Tower, Shinryu, and the little butterfly monster landed at the edge of the farm town. In the woods outside the town, a little fluorescent light was floating in the forest. It looked like a beautiful night. However, Kelowna and Shinryu did not feel anything. Instead, he spoiled the atmosphere and said, "Oh, I can feel the abnormal smell of Fafnir soon. It is indeed nearby, and it is very close." The master of the Radiance Tower looked at the night sky. Vaguely, he seemed to hear something. He listened carefully. "Beauty, beauty, beauty, where are you? Beauty." In the sky, a figure wrapped in a bath towel flew and approached from afar. After Kelowna and Shinryu heard this, they suddenly felt a chill. Why do I have an impulse to beat this guy? Teacher, can you control yourself? The master of the Radiance Tower immediately persuaded. Beauty, beauty, beauty. Kelowna and Shinryu suddenly clenched his fist. No, I can't control this fist. Just don't kill me, right? After that, Kelowna and Shinryu directly rushed to the sky. Teacher, the master of the Radiance Tower couldn't help but sigh. Then, he looked at the little butterfly monster and asked helplessly, "Is teacher's temper like this recently?" The little butterfly monster thought with her finger in her mouth. Well, it seems that after coming back from Mount Tai, I don't know why he became angry easily. Mount Tai? The master of the Radiance Tower was startled. Then he said, "Is it the thick fog incident that happened in China not long ago?" Yes. The little butterfly monster nodded. The master of the Radiance Tower pondered for a while. Then, he felt that the flow of magic essence had begun to become denser. So he directly said, "Can I ask you for a favor?" Of course. The little butterfly monster quickly nodded. The master of the Radiance Tower said, "Teacher's movements are a bit loud. I want to set up a static enchantment here, and try not to alarm the clan vampires in the farm. If possible, please let teacher be a bit quieter." Okay. The little butterfly monster directly opened her colorful butterfly wings and flew out of the forest. Seeing this, the tower master of the Radiance Tower heaved a sigh of relief and began to focus on preparing the spell he had mentioned. A spell to isolate sound was silently activated in the small town of the farm. Even the high-ranking nobles of the clan who were temporarily staying in the farm did not notice it. Then, just as the master of the Radiance Tower was about to set up the capture spell, little bits of fluorescent light floated past him and seemed to be heading in a certain direction. The master of the Radiance Tower looked at the direction where the fluorescent light gathered in confusion and couldn't help but frown. Not far from a villa, there was a small forest filled with fluorescent light. Even at night, one could see flowers everywhere in the forest. Many of them could be considered as treasures in the modern world. "I'll wait for you here. Then I'll come back after I'm done." The servant girl nodded. The place she wanted to go was naturally the cave passage on the way out of the crack, where Norman and Beakies lived. According to Boss Luo's intention, she should tidy up that place so that no one would disturb them. When he could do it manually and had ample time, Boss Luo would naturally choose to do it by himself. After the servant girl left, Boss Luo directly sat down under a small tree in the forest. He opened the second animal skin handbook. At this time, the fluorescent light in the forest began to gather here. They gathered into a whirlpool above the small sea of flowers and scattered over every inch of the place, making the brightness of the place suitable for reading. Perhaps we were all wrong. Children are not scary at all. What we are afraid of is just the fear of recalling the days when we were crops. The second child of Beakies, and I actually didn't need much, just a little blood every day. What cute child. Because of the arrival of the second child, even if we live in a place far away from our companions, we don't seem to feel lonely. I like it when the child calls me daddy, and I like it when the child calls Beakies mommy. Once again, I feel the heartbeat that I felt when I first came to this place. Every day is a blissful day. I don't know why Beakies' body suddenly became weak. It became worse. What should I do? What should I do? I have no choice. Maybe there's not enough food. I can't let the child and Beakies starve. So today, I secretly went back to the place where my companions lived. I didn't get any food from my former companions. They seem to have changed. I could only take some risks and go further away to find some fresh algae. There's no other way. The nearby places where I could collect algae were guarded by them. Fortunately, I accidentally found a place full of algae, and it was very close to home. What a lucky discovery. Today, I finished collecting earlier than usual. I was full of expectations and went back home early, but I finally knew that Beaky's body was getting weaker day by day. She's secretly feeding the child more food behind my back. What did I do? What did I do? I picked up a weapon and hit the child directly. It was still in Beaky's arms, but at the same time, it was biting Beaky's wrist. What did I do? I'm sorry, my child. Beaky's hugged me tightly and cried. She told me that she did everything willingly. She asked me to let the child go. It was all she had. I loved her deeply. I couldn't refuse her request. This animal skin handbook was much more delicate than the first one. There were several pages stacked together. Boss Luo stacked the page that he had finished reading and was ready to continue reading. But at this moment, there was a slight sound of footsteps beside him. It wasn't Miss Maid who came back. If he came back, Luo Chio would feel it. Boss Luo looked up and saw a blond young man wearing a white robe with a long wand in his hand. The fluorescent light was like the gathering of stars and turned into a river of stars. It rose little by little in the sea of flowers, illuminating the bright flowers and the quiet woman sitting under the tree. When Hui Yao saw the woman sitting in the middle of the flowers and fireflies, he couldn't help but slow down his footsteps. It was as if he had passed through layers of fog and finally found the beautiful scenery under the magnificent starry sky. He stopped walking. The moment they looked at each other, he had a feeling that he had never felt before in the past 160 years. His heart slightly beat. For more than 100 years, he had been immersed in the vast sea of magic. When he came back to his senses, he had unknowingly reached the peak of the inhuman realm. He had never felt this way before. Even the 103,000 magic books hidden in the Tower of Secretaries couldn't give him a throbbing of his soul. A smile. It was just a simple and friendly smile, but it touched his soul directly. Her smile made Hui Yao feel that this would be a moment that he would remember for the rest of his life. Tonight was a beautiful night. Chapter 1359. The golden dragon, who was wrapped in a towel, suddenly felt that something was blocking its way. It should have been furious, but when it saw who was blocking its way, it instantly changed its expression into one of seeing a ghost. Almost without any hesitation, without any words, the golden dragon instantly turned around and ran away. It was really afraid that this true dragon of the East would feed it that strange pill again. It felt like there was nowhere to vent its energy. It felt like something rushed to the top of its head and then flowed back through its tiny blood vessels to the rest of its body. It felt like it was being roasted by fire. It also felt like its drain was blocked when it was holding its bladder. "Where do you think you're going?" Long Shuo raised its fist and narrowed its eyes. The only thing that came to his mind was that Hui Yao, this brat, knew him very well. After sensing that something similar to a barrier had been cast around him, the true dragon of China decided to loosen up his muscles and bones. When it was in Kelowna, it had too many worries and accumulated too much pressure. Every time the Kelowna Shinryu visited the inhuman domain in the west, it would feel like it was a vacation. Then it would let itself go. "Old woman, as a lady, using force will make you unable to get love. You must be elegant." "Ah, really? I've been single for thousands of years. Why would I care about these few decades? You're such a violent person. Which male would dare to ride you?" "The one who can ride me has not been born yet. You don't have to worry about it." "Come, I've accumulated a lot of pressure recently. I don't feel good all over. Let me hit you a few times. Am I a sandbag to relieve pressure? You violent Shinryu can't get married for the rest of your life. I'll curse you. I'll curse you to become old and wrinkled. I'll curse you to die alone and become an old woman. I'll hit you until you can't be saved by the ultimate transformation spell." Looking at the Kelowna Shinryu in front of it, it was like an old single woman who had to work overtime during her period. The golden dragon's heart couldn't help but thump. She was obviously serious. Damned old hag. You think I'm afraid of you? The golden dragon instantly gave up on its elegance and bearing. It let out a roar and revealed its true form. The golden dragon clashed with its golden horns towards Kelowna and Shinryu. That's more like it. Don't make me stop too quickly. Long Shirao laughed maniacally. He opened his arms and grabbed the dragon's horn. Then, he exerted force in his arms and threw the golden dragon to the ground. Rumble. Immediately, sand and pebbles flew everywhere. When the golden dragon hit the ground, a large amount of pebbles soared into the sky. Seeing this scene, the little butterfly demon, who had come with the request of the Radiance Tower Master, immediately felt bad. How could she persuade him? There was no way to stop it. Old hag. Don't hit my face. Again. Enough. The Radiance Tower Master didn't wake up from his daze until the ground shook and he heard Fafnir's roar from afar. He subconsciously furrowed his brows. But at this moment, he saw a huge rock falling down from the sky. Seeing that the quiet woman under the tree was about to be injured by the boulder, the Tower Master of the Radiance Tower waved the magic wand in his hand without any hesitation. A ray of light instantly struck the boulder, turning it into ashes before it could even touch the ground. Miss, are you okay? The Radiance Tower Master leaped forward lightly and appeared under the tree. This kind of movement was too big. Even if it was shielded from external perception, it could be easily sensed with ordinary senses and even heard. Boss Luo resisted the urge to peek at what was happening in front of him. The game between him and Miss Maid was still there, so naturally, he wouldn't break the game rules first. I'm fine. Thank you. Boss Luo smiled slightly and then stood up. But you may have misunderstood. I'm a man, because of a special reason. The Radiance Tower Master's first reaction was to open his mouth slightly. Then, he felt as if something in the depths of his soul had suddenly broken. The feeling of being moved instantly turned into a feeling of suffocation. As the saying goes, the older you are, the wiser you are. As a magician who had lived for more than 160 years, and as the first Tower Master of the Secret Arts Tower, he was very good at self-cultivation. The feeling of suffocation was about to explode. The first Tower Master nodded without any expression on his face. He said with a smile, "You live in the farm nearby, right?" Almost at the moment when the other party revealed his gender, the suffocated Tower Master quickly found a corresponding reason. He knew how the vampire clan's farm operated and was even more clear about the vampire's pursuit of the crop character. Probably, this was a crop created according to the special needs of a certain vampire. But just by looking at the person under the tree, he suddenly understood why those clan vampires were so fanatical about the crop character. For the time being, yes. Boss Luo thought for a while and answered truthfully, "How about you? You don't look like you're from here, right?" The woman in front of him looked at him with hopeful eyes. The curiosity of the unknown made his eyes seem to be covered with a thin layer of starlight. At this time, the first pagoda master quietly took a deep breath and quietly avoided those curious eyes. He found a very good excuse, and that was to look in the direction of the source of the chaos. Well, it's because of some special matters, so I pass by. But don't worry, the chaos will soon stop. Boss Luo thought for a while and also looked at the source of the chaos. But after blocking his perception, he could only vaguely feel a sense of familiarity, and he could only see the shadow of a tree. He was about to lose control. He couldn't help but fall into a dilemma. On the one hand, he wanted to directly break the rules of the game between him and Miss Maid. On the other hand, he tried his best to endure. In the process of enduring, it brought a kind of torment, but it made him feel like he was in danger. He was reluctant to give up and savor it. So there was a very complicated expression on his face. Unknowingly, the first Tower Master was once again attracted by such a face. It was as if there was some kind of magical power in it. Logically speaking, although the first Tower Master had always been studying magic techniques and had never come into contact with women, living like an ascetic, he should not be so troubled. But this kind of natural peace was like a treasure in the world. As long as he stayed beside her, he would be able to calm down. It was as if she could understand his every thought and was very comfortable with his feelings. It was really a dreamy characteristic. Even though he was a man, he had the beautiful qualities that this tower master, who lived an ascetic life, once had when he was young, had when he was looking forward to women. Have you ever thought of leaving this farm? Subconsciously, the first tower master asked a question that even he felt was abrupt, because he knew that crops would never have the idea of leaving. This was a qualified crop for the vampire clan. If he enlightened crops with this idea, it was equal to breaking some of the hidden rules between the two forces. But he didn't seem to regret it. Leave this place? Boss Luo said subconsciously, but I haven't thought of where to go next. Let's talk about it later. I really want to activate omniscience. I already have this idea. If that's the case, it's not considered breaking the rules, right? The first tower master's eyes lit up. He stared at the figure under the tree again and deeply imprinted this appearance in his mind. Then he quickly said, "It's too dangerous here. You'd better leave quickly." As he said, the first tower master waved the magic wand in his hand. Beside Boss Luo, the light of the magic wand instantly turned into 3 light shields surrounding Boss Luo. Boss Luo didn't feel any danger. His own defense mechanism naturally didn't have any reaction. He couldn't help but curiously look at the small diamond-shaped light shields flying around him. The Radiance Tower Master smiled slightly and said, "This is a protection for you. If you don't want to, they will feel your thoughts and protect you. Remember, at any time, as long as you don't want to, you can do it." This way, even if he was summoned by the vampire clan to sacrifice, he should be safe. Sometimes, humans' thoughts were just a moment of impulse and wouldn't go through careful thinking. Such a situation would also happen to Inhuman. Although he was very frustrated, the first Tower Master didn't want this person under the tree to be under the vampire's body in the future. This seems to be something very noble. Boss Luo blinked his eyes, but I'm really a man. I know. The Radiance Tower Master smiled casually. He had almost the strongest power in the Inhuman domain and the largest force. Naturally, he didn't care too much about the secular views. You won't have any psychological burden. Being loyal to one's heart, not letting one's heart be tainted, and acting according to one's feelings. The first Tower Master, who was at this level, said frankly, "This doesn't affect my liking for you. However, it's not a relationship between the opposite sex. It's just a pursuit of beauty. At our level, the physical body is secondary. What we like friends and companions, are actually not inferior to lovers and the like. Compared to the pursuit of physical pleasure, the compatibility of the spiritual world is more pleasurable. When a human body can break away from the low-level needs, then we can truly recognize the essence of the human body. Putting aside gender, I feel that we will be friends with many topics to talk about." Not handsome. Boss Luo seemed to be inspired by something. He had reached the limit of wanting to peek at the blonde youth in front of him. It must be a very beautiful soul. This seems to be a culture of the East. Are you also interested in the Taoism of the East? The first Tower Master's eyes lit up again. Yes, I know a little about it. Boss Luo nodded his head. At this moment, the commotion seemed to have stopped. Hui Yao took a glance at the front. He could tell what he needed to do at what time. So he said directly, "I'm very happy to have met you. I'm looking forward to our next meeting. Perhaps it will be very soon." Hui Yao's figure slowly floated up into the air. He then waved his hand and walked forward. In the next second, he had already disappeared. In the end, he restrained himself and did not pry into the blonde youth's inner thoughts. To some extent, Luochio had a terrifying self-disciplined character. He slowly exhaled. He only felt a warm feeling from the prayer beads on his wrist. Soon, he calmed down the waves in his heart. After calming himself down, Hui Yao slowly descended from the sky. As for the potholes on the ground, he could only pretend that he didn't see them. He just casually waved his magic wand. The soil began to surge. Soon, the surrounding ground was restored to its original state. At this moment, Kelowna's Shinryu leaned against a rock and smoked a cigarette. He looked like an old, unmarried, high-pressure young woman who had just finished a spa session. The word satisfied was written all over his face, and he looked radiant. On the other hand, the little butterfly monster lowered her head and looked at the first tower master pitifully. Obviously, she felt sorry for not being able to complete her task. Hui Yao waved his hand and told the little butterfly monster not to be too concerned. Then, he took a look at Fafnir. Fafnir, who had fallen on the ground, was still in his dragon form. However, both of his eyes had turned white. He was biting his tongue and foaming at the mouth. Then, there were only a few pieces of the golden dragon's sturdy dragon scales left. As for his body, it was covered with greenish-black bruises. After that, he flipped over on the ground and his limbs twitched. Fortunately, he didn't go too far. At this moment, the first tower master heaved a long sigh. Well, it was great that he didn't kill him. He shook his head and walked to the front of the golden dragon. Then he placed his magic wand on Fafnir's forehead and lightly tapped it a few times. The dragon's body began to shrink. Finally, it shrunk to the size of a human. However, this wasn't the golden dragon's original form. Therefore, it couldn't bring its own clothes. The Radiance Tower master glanced at the golden dragon's flat private part and sighed again. In order to protect the young dragon, Kelowna's Shinryu directly waved his hand and covered the little butterfly monster's eyes. The Radiance Tower master nodded his magic wand again. A long cloth appeared in the air and wrapped around Fafnir's body. Then he sighed and said, "Teacher, I heard that the East has a kind of magic that can regenerate broken limbs. Is it useful?" Long Shua glanced at Fafnir again and shook her head. "How many times have I told you? Just use the Taoist technique. Forget it. This kind of Taoist technique needs to be cultivated by oneself. This guy can't cultivate it. There is some medicine that can regenerate broken limbs. However, it's in the Xinyuan Palace's treasure vault. Even I can't just go in and take it." The Radiance Tower master nodded. "It seems that we can only see if we can refine a 6-star regeneration potion. This is a headache. If we can find that Master Rainbow Potion." "Don't you have 2 secret potion masters in your secret arts tower?" Long Shua asked, puzzled. "Those 2 masters aren't good at this kind of secret potion." The Radiance Tower master shook his head and sighed. "However, we can still give it a try. We can't let the golden dragon die out in this generation. If that's the case, I'll be ashamed to face old Fafnir." Okay. Kelowna's Shinryu couldn't bear to see such a lamenting appearance. "If there's no other way, I'll just go to the Xinyuan Palace. This old face of mine should still be useful." The Radiance Tower master directly bowed to Kelowna's Shinryu as a disciple. "Okay, let's go now." Long Shirua asked directly. The Radiance Tower master pondered for a moment and suddenly said, "Teacher, can you take Fafnir to a place to rest first? I still have something to do. I want to find the acting Grand Duke of the Torito clan." "What's the matter?" Long Shirua was startled. Then his face changed slightly. "Wait. Don't tell me you're going to talk about the compensation? Let's make it clear first. The one who caused the destruction is this damn pervert. It has nothing to do with me. I'm afraid the compensation can't be negotiated in just a few words." Hui Yao could only smile bitterly. "It's just a private matter. Teacher, don't worry." Long Shirao pondered for a moment and nodded dubiously. "Okay. No, you can't go for too long. I don't know if I can hold back when this guy wakes up." After saying that, Kelowna's Shinryu stretched out his hand, wanting to grab Fafnir's arm and lift him up. However, after thinking for a while, he wrapped his hand with a cloth with a disgusted look. Then, he grabbed Fafnir's hair and pulled him up. "I'll wait for you in front." Long Shirao pointed at the place where the lights were flashing in front of them. Farmtown. The Radiance Tower master immediately opened his mouth. Kelowna's Shinryu waved his hand and said, "Don't worry, I won't cause any trouble. I'm just sweating and I'm looking for a place to wash myself. Isn't there a villa over there?" She pointed at a lonely villa at the edge of Farmtown and said sincerely, "I really won't cause any trouble. It shouldn't be a problem." She knew her limits. In the end, the first tower master chose to believe her for the sake of their friendship in the past. Just as he said, he was the type who was easy to believe. After a while, "Master," Miss Maid appeared behind Boss Luo like a shadow. She came back because she had dealt with the things in the cave. Therefore, Luocio didn't know the answer and asked, "It seems that there was a disturbance just now. Did you investigate it when you came back?" The answer was yes. He was very clear about Miss Maid's action pattern. It seemed to be Miss Long and Miss Pianxian. Miss Maid smiled and said, "They seem to have a conflict with the golden dragon. So they came here too." Luocio only felt interesting. At the same time, he was relieved of the familiar feeling when the disturbance happened just now. "The reason is unknown." Miss Maid nodded. "Do you need to inquire about it?" "No." Boss Luo shook his head. "I feel I should be able to see them soon. That's all for now." After saying that, Boss Luo sat down again and prepared to finish the second diary that he hadn't finished yet. "The flowers here are good. I want to pick some back." Miss Maid looked at the small cluster of flowers in front of her and whispered, "If you can see them, Miss Pianxian may like them." Boss Luo smiled. "You seem to like that child very much. Isn't it the same for you, master?" Miss Maid chuckled. Boss Luo didn't reply. He just smiled casually and opened the diary, reading it carefully. Yu Yi sat down in the cluster of flowers. Her loose skirt seemed to be one of the flowers in the sea of flowers. She took a fancy to some Austin Chinese roses. She smiled and reached out to pick them. The Chinese roses gradually turned into pink and white flower balls in her hands. Boss Luo suddenly looked up and chuckled, like a bride. Chapter 1360. What do you want to do? In front of the door of the small villa, Long Shuo was stunned when she saw the butterfly monster was about to knock on the door. Knock on the door. Sure enough, Long Shuo shook her head and said like an experienced person, "Listen, we're just waiting here for a while. There's no need to disturb the guy inside. Well, it's a bit strange." As she spoke, she used her hand to push the little butterfly monster behind her, and then casually threw the golden dragon on the ground, and then tentatively pushed open the villa's door. Squeak! The vestibule at the entrance was dim, but there was a faint light at the front of the corridor. The true dragon of the divine land glanced at it, pondered for a while, and walked in directly. "Sister Long, you didn't take off your shoes." Don't be fooled by her harsh tone. In fact, she was just angry. Looking back at the big-breasted butterfly's serious face, the true dragon of the godly land raised her hand and pinched her fingers into the shape of a drill bit. She looked like a mother teaching her daughter. The butterfly monster held her head and didn't squat down. Long Shuo then made a gesture of silence, and then walked towards the light, which came from the crack of the door. And when she was about to reach the door, Long Shuo unexpectedly found a big hole in the ceiling of the corridor. It seemed to be hit by something. Why did she feel that this place was full of the smell of golden dragon Fafnir? And there seemed to be a very special fragrance left. The perfume smell was a bit familiar. She seemed to have felt it somewhere before. Before she was confused, Long Shuo tilted her head and gently pushed the door of the living room. The door opened slowly, and she looked in. Long Shuo just stood at the entrance of the living room for a long time. Luo Dance was really anxious, so she held the golden dragon with both hands, closed the door, and dragged it into the corridor. She came to Kelowna's Shinryu and called softly, "Sister Long?" Long Shuo just pointed at the living room. Little butterfly monster subconsciously looked inside and saw that the living room was very bright. It was an old European style from decades ago. Then, she saw a woman sleeping on the carpet. To be precise, he had fainted on the ground. This person, is he injured? Would you get hurt in your own home? Long Shirua snapped. Of course. Sometimes I'll hit my head or toe. Thus, Kelowna's Shinryu pinched her fingers into a drill bit again. When the little butterfly monster was rubbing her head, Shinryu had already walked to the side of this woman who couldn't get up from the ground. He flipped this woman over. What entered his eyes was a pair of shameful things that didn't lose to the butterfly monster. TSK. Long Shuo pursed her lips, then stretched out her fingers to the woman's neck and opened the woman's collar a little, revealing 2 small wounds on her neck. Long Shuo rubbed her chin, looking at the little butterfly monster's eyes, thinking, this woman has probably just been bitten by a vampire. She should have fainted due to anemia. Vampire. Luo Dance suddenly looked around nervously. He should have left after sucking the blood. I don't feel any other aura in this house except for this woman, Shinryu said casually. But there's a smell of urine and perfume. Perfume? The little butterfly monster subconsciously sniffed a few times. It's really perfume. It smells like Sister Yuyi. What? Shinryu frowned. You mean the two-faced woman who stuck to that profiteer all day long and acted coquettishly? How could she be here? You're right. Little butterfly monster nodded. In order to avoid the pain of the drill, she automatically ignored Kelowna Shinryu's description of Miss Servant Girl. At this moment, she helped the woman on the ground to the sofa and put her down. Sister Long, are we going to wait here for Mr. Hui Yao to come back? Longshaw said directly. This woman won't wake up for a while. Generally speaking, vampires like to find a place to lie down after eating in the name of enjoying the aftertaste. In fact, it's like taking drugs and entering the useless mode. They won't come back for a while. This place is at the edge of the farm, so we can stay here for a while. You keep an eye on Fafner here, and I'll walk around the house. I feel uncomfortable all over. With that, Kelowna Shinryu muttered. In the palm of her hand, a golden rope slowly stretched out and then wrapped around Fafner's body, tying it up. She put her palms together and then opened them. Then something spread out from her body and spread all over the living room. I've set up a barrier here. Before I come back, don't leave this living room. Longshaw thought for a while and felt worried. She tied up the woman who had fainted as well. Be good and wait here for me to come back. If this thing wakes up and you find it noisy, just find something to stuff its mouth. Okay. Late at night, the castle of the Torito clan had almost been cleaned up. All the valuable, undamaged, or restorable works of art had been cleared out. However, many of the vampires were heartbroken when they saw that a large number of works of art had been completely destroyed in this disaster. This clan was the group that pursued art and beauty the most among the 13 clans. As they spoke, their hatred for the Golden Dragon gradually increased. At this time, Baligan was inspecting the east wing of the original castle. He bent down and picked up a deformed golden cup from the ground, swept the dust on it. Finally, he shook his head and threw the cup back to the ground. Baligan. At the same time, Kaloya and the Misteel Tower Master came together. Seeing the arrival of the Misteel Tower Master, Baligan's face was more or less like a reunion after a long separation. Unlike the werewolf Kaloya, who rarely interacted with each other, acting Grand Duke Baligan was much more courteous toward this Mithril Tower Master. Baligan, I've heard the general situation from Kaloya. The Misteel Tower Master went straight to the point. I want to know if you already have any plans for gathering us here. In the end, after waiting for a long time, only you and Kaloya came. Baligan shook his head. There are fewer people than I expected. After all, it's too unbelievable. The Misteel Tower Master shook his head. You should know that it's already 100 years ago. And in these 100 years, it's been peaceful. Most of the new generation doesn't know about those guys. As for the other guys, they might just be watching if they don't come. I have a rough idea of their attitude. Baligan waved his hand. By the way, have you told this matter to your Radiance Tower Master? Not yet. The Misteel Tower Master shook his head and said, before the matter has conclusive evidence, I don't intend to attract too much attention. If it's just a false alarm, I'll just treat it as if I'm just here to visit my former comrades. I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. Baligan laughed bitterly. I'm afraid the ones I encountered this time are more terrifying than the ones back then. In front of one of them, I couldn't even resist. You after 100 years? Kaloya could not help but frown directly. Unlike him, because he was old, his bodily functions had begun to decline, and his strength had been greatly reduced. For creatures like vampires, the older they were, the stronger they were. No one knew to what extent Baligan had evolved 100 years after that war. Kaloya suddenly said, in the first 10 years after the war, you were fully capable of becoming the 14th Grand Duke, right? Baligan said indifferently, 100 years ago, if the team that joined the coalition army was not us, but the Grand Duke, the Beast King, and the Radiance Tower Master, how much do you think the survival rate would have increased? Our survival rate back then was less than 1%. About 20%. Kaloya scratched his head. He was not good at calculating this kind of data. However, even if it was a tragic victory 100 years ago, after 100 years of cultivation, the new generation has also grown up. Overall, I feel that the overall strength of the current inhuman domain is much stronger than when it was established 100 years ago. And we still have the spoils of war. You want to fight? The Misty Tower master frowned and looked at this guy who was past his prime but was still warlike in nature. If you're scared, then be scared. Don't use words like strategic compromise. Kaloya said in a deep voice, "Werewolves only have warriors who stand and face the enemy. There are no cowards who retreat. Balegan, you were the one who discovered this time, and you were the one who gathered them. Do you want to fight or what? Speak. I'm really glad that you weren't the commander back then." Balegan shook his head in annoyance. Fight or not? I want to go to the battlefield back then and take a look. I'll decide after that. Battlefield. The Misty Tower master was startled. What's there to see? We've been exploring that place for 10 years after the war, but we didn't find anything. No, Balegan said seriously. I had the same idea before. But after today, I have a feeling that we've forgotten something back then. I have a feeling that we might be able to find the answer if we go there again. Holding a doubtful attitude, Kaloya muttered to himself in silence. What do you want us to do? The Misty Tower master asked directly. Balegan said, I was going to go with you, but I want to take care of things here first, so it might be a little later. How about giving me half a day? Kaloya sneered. Those guys have reappeared, and you still have the leisure to clean up the place? But you don't know that 12 Grand Dukes have just died. Balegan just glanced at this rude guy indifferently. He really couldn't understand how this guy could create so many highly artistic scripts. It was simply illogical. All right, the Misty Tower master nodded. The battlefield is sealed anyway, and it will take some time to open the seal. Then I'll go with Kaloya first, and you follow behind. It was obvious that the Misty Tower master was a man of action. As he spoke, he had already summoned the flying carpet and stepped on it. Kaloya, see you later, vampire. The werewolf hero shrugged and jumped on the flying carpet. In the blink of an eye, the flying carpet had already rushed into the air. Looking at the flying carpet in the distance, Balegan said quietly, Only two. It seems that my integrity is really tested. Shaking his head, Bailey began to wander around the castle ruins again. Not long after, a vampire came forward to report that Baseby had successfully survived the Lost Rift and had arrived at the farm. Ask him to come and see me. Balegan thought for a moment and then gave the order. After the vampire left, Balegan came to the edge of the rift and looked at the bottomless place below, falling into deep thought. Before the 12 Grand Dukes died, they said that something had happened in the rift. But before he had time to inquire about it, he felt that things had suddenly become chaotic. From the appearance of the people in that place to the Golden Dragon's rebellion, the death of the 12 Grand Dukes, and the rift's change, it had only been less than a day. He could not even find a complete sequence of events from so much information. While thinking, Balegan suddenly felt something. His expression changed slightly. Then he adjusted his emotions and slowly turned around. He saw that not far from the cliff, a figure had arrived at some point. This figure was wrapped in a faint light, and it was difficult for Balegan to see the figure's true appearance. But he knew the figure's identity very well. Balegan slowly stepped forward. I really didn't expect that the things here would alarm you. So, Tower Master of Radiance, is there anything I can help you with? The person who appeared here was the first Tower Master of the Magician Association's Secret Arts Tower, Radiance, who had just bid farewell to Long Shua. Bathed in light and shadow, the Tower Master of Radiance looked completely different when he faced the acting Grand Duke of the clan compared to when he faced Kelowna Shinryu. Just like when he was in the Secret Arts Tower, he was full of majesty. This kind of sizing up seemed to be trying to see through Balegan. It was just that the acting Grand Duke's face was calm, and there was nothing to nitpick about his bearing and behavior. The Tower Master of Radiance said slowly, regarding the rebellion of the Golden Dragon, Fafnir, it is indeed our association's failure to supervise. I will send someone to verify the Chorito clan's losses this time, and then fully compensate you. to be able to alarm the Tower Master of Radiance and personally come to express your concern. The matter of compensation can be ignored. Balegan smiled slightly. Besides, the destroyed things are just some dead objects, and we have no real casualties. It's just that the Golden Dragon is also missing here. I hope that the Tower Master of Radiance can find it as soon as possible to avoid greater losses. You can rest assured about this. The Tower Master of Radiance said indifferently, I have found Fafnir. I want to assure you that similar things will not happen again. Since there is a promise from the Tower Master of Radiance, Balegan is naturally willing to accept it. Balegan smiled slightly. You are a guest from afar. Why don't you invite the Tower Master of Radiance to the farm? I will entertain you. No need. The Tower Master of the Radiance Tower waved his hand. I'm going to bring Fafnir back soon. Send my regards to the members of the Torito clan who were injured in this disaster. Also, tell them that their stay fees will be halved this year. Thank you very much. The Tower Master of Radiance nodded and seemed to be planning to leave. However, he did not leave just like that, which made Balegan puzzled. The first Tower Master was silent for a moment before slowly opening his mouth. There is one more thing. Tower Master, please speak. The Tower Master of Radiance was silent for a moment before opening his mouth. I want to ask for one of the crops from your farm. Although crops were the precious property of the clan, it wasn't to the extent that they would be reluctant to give them away when facing the truly powerful beings in the inhuman domain. In fact, because the crops of the clan's farm were too outstanding, some of the local bosses who had connections would occasionally make such a request. What he did not expect was that even the first Tower Master of the Secret Arts Tower would have such a request. Is there a problem? The Tower Master of Radiance asked indifferently. Why did he use this kind of light and shadow effect? Naturally, it was because he felt that this kind of behavior was too shameful. Of course not. Balegan hurriedly said, since the Tower Master has taken a fancy to it, it is naturally our honor. Then, may I know who the Tower Master is referring to in the farm? I will definitely deliver it personally. The Tower Master of Radiance opened his mouth. Here came the embarrassing thing. He did not know the name of the person under the tree. He actually forgot to ask. Him. Balegan subconsciously opened his mouth. It's him, not her. In the Western language, the distinction between him and her was very clear. The Tower Master of Radiance immediately shook his head and waved his hand. In front of Balegan, another light and shadow slowly appeared. The light and shadow gradually became clearer. It seemed to be a woman. At least, it was dressed like a woman. However, when this figure was about to fully appear, her face was covered with a layer of mist, and it was impossible to see any trace of her appearance. Tower Master of Radiance, this is... Balegan was puzzled again. It was not only the acting Grand Duke who was puzzled. The first Tower Master of the Secret Arts Tower was also puzzled. He actually could not recognize the appearance of the person under the tree. This was embarrassing, but the Tower Master was after all, so he said without blushing, he is about 21 or 22 years old, a typical Eastern face, black hair and black eyes. Although he is a male, he is the most ideal type of female. In addition, he may have dabbled in the Eastern Taoist culture. It is really a very special character. The Tower Master of Radiance coughed lightly and said, I just hit it off with him, and I am interested in accepting him as my student. Don't think too much. I won't think too much, definitely. Balegan nodded seriously. This is my private communication crystal. The Tower Master of Radiance threw a crystal to the acting Grand Duke and disappeared on the spot. Balegan looked at the first Tower Master's private communication crystal in his hand. He heard that there were not many people in the inhuman domain who had this thing. But when did Farm have such a character design? Balegan could not help but fall into deep confusion. After all, no matter what, he was still a dormitory supervisor who cultivated one crop after another. Chapter 1361. Inhuman Territory, Magician Association Headquarters. The dragon of Ajuin, floating in the sky, whispered discontentedly from time to time. The evilest knight was still stepping on its body and holding the granddaughter of the sword saint hostage. Looking at the crowd outside the Magician Association headquarters, Ms. Witch was surprised and asked curiously, "Today is the Magician Association's rice distribution day. Why are there so many people?" Of course, her question was not answered. Farrell just stared at the 200th floor of the Magician Association headquarters and suddenly said, "Hui Yao is not here. Even the secret steel is not here." Ms. Witch knew the title of the Tower Master. There was probably no one in the inhuman territory who did not know the title of the Tower Master. "How do you know?" Ms. Ji Lien asked curiously. "When the level of power increases, naturally I can feel it." Farrell's words still shocked the Spirit Witch. Even if she was not as good as the old monsters from 100 years ago, she was not too bad among the new generation. Even if she was not outstanding, she was at least above the standard. They used the war 100 years ago as a dividing point, and those who grew up after the war were all called the new generation. The granddaughter of the sword, Saint, was holding the pillow anxiously. She opened her mouth several times, but could not say anything. However, she vaguely knew something from the conversation between Farrell and the Spirit Witch. The two mentioned the war of 100 years, they came back and so on. Although she was not from that era, as the granddaughter of the Sword Saint, she was involved in the history of 100 years ago. Generally speaking, she would know more than the ordinary new generation. It seemed like 100 years ago, the enemy that her grandfather, as the commander of the Allied forces, led the Allied forces to fight against had appeared again. Sir Farrell." The granddaughter of the Sword Saint finally gathered enough courage and whispered, "Excuse me, can I go home now?" Farrell looked back, and the granddaughter of the Sword Saint tensed up. She did not even dare to look at him in the eyes. Farrell said, "You need to inherit your grandfather's responsibility. He was our commander in the beginning. Even if you are not qualified to be the commander, as his descendant, you can't retreat and disgrace the name of the Sword Saint." The Sword Saint's granddaughter, Leia, pursed her lips and said in an even softer voice, I didn't." Without a word, Farrell dashed forward and slapped Leia's face. Smack. No one would have thought that Roland would slap the fat maiden. Anyway, Miss Witch was so shocked that her jaw almost fell off her face. "I don't need someone weak, and I don't need someone who isn't confident." Looking at the helpless, frightened, and aggrieved fat girl who was covering her face, Farlier's heart was as hard as steel. "I don't care how you feel. If the other you is more suitable, then I will need the other you. Now, whether you live or die, whether you exist or disappear, it doesn't matter. Or rather, please disappear right now. I only need your ability. I'm not going to help you get rid of anything like a life coach. Please show me the aura of a swordsman when you point your sword at me." So hardcore? Miss Witch murmured in her throat while cursing this old guy in her heart for being a lunatic. Leia lowered her head and hugged her pillow, her body trembling slightly. The dragon of Ajuin couldn't stand it anymore and said angrily, "Old lunatic, you're too much. At least consider Leia's feelings." "What do you know?" Farrell said calmly, "I don't need to know anything. Everyone in the world carries different things. No one is special. Other than children, no one deserves to be taken care of. You, change course." Farrell snorted and exerted some force on his feet, pushing the dragon of Ajuin down a little. "Go to the orc territory." "I'm not going." The black dragon was also furious. Farrell reached out and grabbed without saying anything. The air in the sky instantly formed a long sword of air in his palm and slashed across the dragon's back. The sturdy dragon's scales instantly broke, and a 2-meter-long wound appeared on the dragon's back. The skin and flesh were torn open. Ajuin couldn't help but roar in pain. The dragon's roar attracted the attention of the people below. But when the non-humans on the ground looked up, they only saw a tail of air in the clouds. That sounded like a dragon's roar. "The golden dragon is here again. Open the door. Open the door. My loss hasn't been registered yet. Business ape of the association. Don't force me to steal your wives. Come out." The 200th floor of the association headquarters. The Magician Association's Secret Arts Tower currently had a total of 5 Tower Masters. They were the first Tower Master Hui Yao, the Crimson Blaze Tower Master, the Ice Tower Master, the Thunder Tower Master, and the Mithril Tower Master who was promoted due to his merits. At this time, the Crimson Blaze Tower Master and the Ice Tower Master who were imprisoned by the First Tower Master were still imprisoned. The First Tower Master and the Mithril Tower Master were nowhere to be found. Only the Thunder Tower Master, who was in charge of the Secret Arts Tower, was left in the Secret Arts Tower. Speaking of this Thunder Tower Master, he was much older than the other 4 Tower Masters. From the modern world to the completion of the construction of the inhuman domain, to entering this domain, it could be said that this Thunder Tower Master had witnessed the prosperity of the Magician Association over the past hundreds of years, and had also experienced several internal turmoil in the association. The members of the Thunder Tower Master had always been changing. Only the Thunder Tower Master had never changed in all these years. In a huge room, the Thunder Tower Master looked at the night sky through the circular floor-to-ceiling window. This sound seems to be Roland's dragon. He shook his head. For some reason, this Thunder Tower Master, who had experienced many storms, had a feeling that a storm was coming. This might be the so-called sixth sense of a high-level non-human. He looked at the suffering people gathered below and couldn't help but have a headache. After dealing with these things, he still couldn't go home and tell his granddaughter bedtime stories to coax her to sleep. These young people really don't care about the elderly at all. The Thunder Tower Master sighed, then waved his hand and said in a low voice, "Make me a pot of coffee." "Who is it?" This Thunder Tower Master was still a treasure. The moment he sensed that there was another intruder, he reacted at lightning speed. The magic wand slipped from his sleeve, and he grabbed it in his hand. The moment he turned around, the magic wand also directly pointed at the intruder. In an instant, lightning shot out from the magic wand, and then turned into a lightning tree. The jagged lightning directly covered every corner of the room. The place where the lightning couldn't reach quickly appeared. In the corner, the sky seemed to have collapsed. When the branches of the lightning tree reached here, they were directly sucked in. Then, the surrounding space began to become three-dimensional. It was as if dozens of prism mirrors were placed here. These mirrors then shattered, and the fragments scattered. However, in an instant, the lightning tree completely withered, and the Thunder Tower Master couldn't help but take 2 steps back. The Thunder Tower Master was slightly shocked, but he managed to calm himself down. Looking at the source of the spatial anomaly, the Thunder Tower Master frowned. Then, as if he had thought of something, his expression suddenly changed. "You haven't died yet?" The scattered mirrors on the ground suddenly gathered in this special space. They gathered together, as if they were randomly crumpled into a ball of glass shards. Then, a figure began to appear. When this figure completely appeared, the Thunder Tower Master's gaze suddenly became flustered. He quickly raised a magic wand in his hand. But, a strong light instantly covered the entire area. This strong light even penetrated the flower window here and shot out of the tower, alarming the people on the ground below the 200th floor. When a magician in the tower hurriedly knocked on the door of the Thunder Tower Master's office, he saw the Thunder Tower Master standing in front of the window with his hands behind his back. "Tower Master, just now?" "Nothing, I just thought of a technique and casually tested it." The Thunder Tower Master didn't turn his head, only giving a simple explanation. "I see." The magician nodded and didn't suspect anything. He continued, "Oh right, Tower Master, did you call for me just now? I seem to have heard your voice transmission." The Thunder Tower Master slowly turned around and said with a smile, "Oh, I want you to make a pot of coffee for me." "Okay, I'll go right away." When the magician left and closed the door, the smile on the Thunder Tower Master's face disappeared. He looked around the room. When he walked past the office desk, he stretched out his hand and slowly swept the edge of the desk. He closed his eyes, as if he was feeling something, and muttered to himself, "It's been some time since I came back here." He slowly stretched out his hand, and a ball of light slowly floated out from his palm. The ball of light vibrated, occasionally sweeping across an angry and frightened face, the face of the Thunder Tower Master. Not only did she put the unconscious woman on the sofa, the diligent butterfly monster also put the unconscious golden dragon who was hammered by Sister Long on the sofa. She found some water in the living room. The butterfly monster, who was used in nursing, thought for a while, washing 2 pieces of cloth, and then began to wipe the woman and golden dragon's face. At this time, Long Shua's voice suddenly rang in her ears. "Sister Long, I've seen this house. There's nothing special." Long Shua's voice was very clear. "Oh, I found a good place. Come over." "Where is it?" "A huge bathroom. The temperature of the water is just right. It seems to be specially prepared by someone." "Do you remember the pervert Fafner's appearance just now? I think he may have prepared it for himself." "Does Mr. Fafner live here?" Luo Dance was startled. "God knows. Maybe he's a dove occupying a magpie's nest. He's not good at other things, but he especially likes to be beautiful and clean. After a day of trouble, not only did you destroy his house, but you also wanted to eat and take here whatever. Are you coming over or not? If not, wait for me in the living room for a while." "Oh, wait for me," Luo Dance said quickly. Females seem to be unable to get rid of the temptation of bathing. They have been running around for a long time today. A small hole was opened in the enchantment of the living room. The butterfly monster went through it and soon came to the bathroom mentioned by Long Shua. When she opened the door and went in, she saw the steam in the bathroom. Long Shua had already sat on the edge of the small swimming pool, directly soaking her body, showing a satisfied face. "Ah, I feel like I'm alive." Kelowna's Shinryu loosened his neck, then looked at the butterfly monster. "What are you doing? Come down." "Ooh." With that, the butterfly monster grabbed the bottom of the clothes and then turned them up. Finally, after putting the folded clothes aside, the butterfly monster walked a few steps with a cheerful laugh and then directly jumped into the bath. The water splashed everywhere, and she happily played in the water like a child. "Really? Why are you so happy?" Long Shirua held her cheek with a gentle look. The butterfly monster swam in the water like a paparazzi, hearing that, "Because this is the first time I'm taking a bath with Sister Long. I didn't even try in the hospital." Kelowna's Shinryu snorted. "The bathroom in the hospital only has a small bathtub. I'm sorry. I didn't mean that." "No, I mean, I'm teasing you, silly girl." Long Shua smiled, then turned around, revealing her smooth back. "Come and give me a massage. I always feel that my shoulders are a bit heavy recently. I'm at the age of being tortured by pressure." "Okay." Swimming behind Long Shua, the little butterfly monster easily found a towel for wiping her back, various kinds of shampoo, and a basin with transparent viscous liquid in the pile of things beside the bathtub. "What's this?" The butterfly monster used her finger to touch the viscous liquid in the basin. The liquid connected into a crystal silk thread. The true dragon, who was lying on the edge of the pool, glanced at it and subconsciously said, "Collagen lubricant, isn't it? Isn't there a lot of films in traditional baths? It's for applying on the body." "What's a film of traditional baths?" The butterfly monster blinked her eyes. "It's a teaching video of a different kind of massage therapy," Kelowna's Shinryu said without blushing. "I'll teach you when you're older." "Hmm?" The butterfly monster tilted her head and thought for a while, her fingers rubbing the slippery liquid on her fingertips. Then she directly applied it on Shinryu's back. "Is it like this?" The cold feeling made this Shinryu shiver all over. "Don't apply it on me." Long Shua uncomfortably roared twice. "This stuff is applied on the massager's body. Is it like this?" Hearing this, the butterfly monster grabbed another handful of lubricant and began to apply it on her body. The tender white skin seemed to be plated with a thin layer of crystal. She tried to rub her body with her hands and then laughed. "Wow, it's slippery, so interesting. Sister Long, try it too." With that, before Shinryu could react, the butterfly monster directly hugged him. The trembling ball was suddenly squeezed together. A rather subtle feeling made the true dragon shudder again. Should it be said that this was something that he had learned without a teacher? Hee itchy, so comfortable. "Damn it, don't touch there." "Sister Long, are you ticklish?" "Well, Agile, it seems that you've forgotten the fear of being controlled by the dragon claw. You want to run away after offending me?" Secret skill, 48 hands. "Hmm?" "Chirp. Today's harvest is good." In front of the villa, Miss Maid, who was holding a bunch of Austin roses in her hand, said with a smile, In front of the door, Boss Luo stopped and smiled. Well, it's quite lively inside. Miss Maid heard it and listened carefully. She didn't have any perception, but it didn't mean that her hearing was weak. She heard the faint sound and covered her mouth with her small hand. Oh, it seems it's true. /1_ M. Chapter 1362. The temperature of the water in the bathtub didn't seem to drop with the passage of time. The constant temperature design of the bathtub made the bathtub more and more hazy. She seemed to have walked into a foggy place. She could vaguely see two figures sticking together at the edge of the bathtub. Occasionally, some strange moans and gasps could be heard. Sister Long, I feel that my body has become strange, just like the last time. It felt like drinking some kind of lemon tea. After taking a sip, she couldn't help but continue to suck it subconsciously until she felt refreshed. Kelowna's Shinryu was in such a state. At first, she just wanted to retaliate by using her hands, but then she couldn't stop. Her hands seemed to be out of her control, and she became more and more skilled in using the secret technique. She couldn't stop at all. The feeling of bullying this little butterfly monster was too wonderful. Well, the little butterfly monster was lying on the edge of the bathtub, weak all over. She opened her mouth slightly, Sister Long. At the same time, the two thin, colorful butterfly wings on her slender back were like flower buds in the water, waiting to blossom. They spread out little by little. Long Shirua found another reason for her to stop. Oh, so you don't have to wait for yourself to enter estrus. You can also do it manually? It seems that I need to study it carefully. But this kind of strange powder, even if she didn't pay attention, she would still fall into it. When the little butterfly's wings were still in the water, the powder had already been secreted and blended into the water. Kelowna's Shinryu was soaking in the bathtub, relaxing all the pores on her body. A little bit of powder that hadn't completely dissolved was now adhering to the Shinryu's skin through the vibration of the water, penetrating little by little, but this trace element obviously couldn't be noticed by the Shinryu. Kelowna's Shinryu's attention was now focused on the colorful butterfly wings that were slowly spreading out. Subconsciously, her hands began to move more carefully, trying to explore more forbidden areas that could allow the flower to blossom. While observing the extent of the butterfly's wings, Longshaw suddenly wrapped her arms around the little butterfly's body from behind. The more sensitive the area was, the faster the powder would form. The butterfly wings were not fully opened yet. It was like a frosted maple leaf, looking listless. At this time, Luo Dance's breathing frequency unconsciously increased. Her whole body was lying in Shinryu's arms. She felt ashamed and resentful of Sister Long's evil hands. Gradually, her consciousness began to enter a strange state. Under the warm water, she subconsciously clamped her legs together. Between her inner thighs, it seemed to be uncomfortable, so she kept rubbing against each other. Because of the stirring, small ripples appeared in the pool, making it murky. Is it done, Sister Long? She raised her head. In the warm and humid bathroom, her eyelashes were already wet, as if there were small crystal plates hanging on them. Even his gaze was filled with the water vapor of the tide. It's not enough. Long Shirua chuckled. While observing the changes of the butterfly wings, she lowered her head and her lips began to wander around the ears of the little butterfly. Remember to observe clearly last time. This time, you need to observe more. I'm beginning to be interested in your strange changes. I really don't know what that girl fed you to make you become like this. But Shinryu's secret skill seemed to have reached a limit. Though the butterfly wings had blossomed, it hadn't reached the limit. The magical powder had been formed, but the amount was far less than the last time when the little butterfly entered estrus. The quality was also quite bad. Was it because the stimulation was not enough? Longshaw pondered for a moment, directly grabbing the weak arm of the little butterfly, whispering, "Next, try it yourself like what I did just now." "No, don't." The little butterfly's remaining reason made the little butterfly resist this suggestion that made her heart beat faster. But her arm didn't have any strength. Even though she resisted verbally, under the guidance of Kelowna Shinryu, she began to touch her body subconsciously. The butterfly wings that hadn't blossomed for a long time seemed to have opened a little because of this stimulation. Long Shuo noticed the changes of the butterfly wings. Suddenly, she had the feeling of many years ago when she was still living in Xinyuan Palace, when she woke up in the middle of the night and watched the flowers bloom. Long Shuo's hands suddenly stopped. Seems like someone broke into my barrier. Kelowna Shinryu's eyes suddenly showed a trace of cold light, and she jumped out of the bathtub at the fastest speed. It was too time-consuming to wear clothes, so she reached out and grabbed a bath towel, directly wrapping it around her body. The little butterfly woke up at once. She shook the butterfly wings on her back uncomfortably, and then a little powder fell into the bathtub. She didn't care about it, but seeing Long Shuo had rushed out of the bathroom, she wrapped the towel around herself and grabbed the clothes on the side of the bathtub, hurriedly flapping her butterfly wings and flying out of the bathtub. In the corridor, Miss Maid holding a bouquet walked side by side with Boss Luo, coming to the door of the living room. After thinking for a while, Boss Luo wiped off his clothes and returned to his original appearance. He didn't care about anything, but it was also a kind of politeness to maintain his appearance in front of acquaintances. Based on this idea, Boss Luo said to Miss Maid in a low voice after returning to his original appearance, "Next time you want to dress up, you have to use the promise card." How could she be willing to use such a precious thing? She said she would collect them one by one. Luochio pushed open the door of the living room, and the barrier set up here blocked them. Luochio didn't have the habit of breaking in, but after seeing Fafner tied up in the barrier and Teresa, he directly walked into the barrier. He didn't destroy it, but directly went to the bow of the ship. Although he didn't know why the golden dragon was tied up here, he thought it had something to do with the blonde young man he met in the forest in Kelowna Shinryu. Miss Teresa seems to have had her blood sucked. Miss Maid, on the other hand, was obviously more concerned about Teresa. Of course, her concern was relative to the golden dragon. Between the two fainted guys, Miss Maid didn't hesitate to give up the golden dragon. That was all. Blood-sucking. Luochio thought for a while. It should have happened after we went out. It should be. Miss Maid checked the wound on Teresa's neck and said, "It may be the work of a vampire in the farm, but it's hard to say now. Maybe it's the vampire called Norman. Of course, Miss Long may know something." Luochio waved his hand. "It's very impolite to disturb a woman's bath. Let's wait here." Miss Maid said softly, "Then I'll find a vase and put these flowers in it." Luochio nodded. After Miss Maid walked away, he subconsciously reached out to touch the wound on Teresa's neck, but when his fingers were about to touch it, he withdrew his hand. He looked at his palm, then shook his head. He felt that sometimes a habit was even more terrible. Boss Luo suddenly turned around and said to Miss Maid, who hadn't gone far, "We should prepare some tea, right?" "Of course." Miss Maid nodded and walked towards the kitchen. Long Shuo rushed all the way to the door of the living room, but she suddenly stopped. She felt a sudden rush of blood, and an uncomfortable feeling made her hesitate for a moment. She frowned and finally pushed the door of the living room open directly. In the living room, because Huang Jinlong and Teresa were lying on the sofa, Boss Luo simply stood and admired the hanging paintings in the living room. It wasn't Miss Maid who opened the door, but Kelowna Shinryu with wet hair wrapped in a bath towel. Boss Luo was quite surprised by her appearance. Long Shuo was now frozen on the spot. She couldn't find any response. "We meet again, Miss Long." Boss Luo took the initiative to greet her. "I didn't want to disturb you, but it seems that I did." "What?" Kelowna Shinryu was stunned, and then she realized that the current situation was not good. She had never thought of this kind of meeting. "Wait, when did this profiteer come in? What happened in the bathroom?" Thinking of this terrible possibility, Kelowna Shinryu just wanted to find a hole to hide in. Nothing. This profiteer always saw her worst side every time. "No, don't think too much." Long Shuo was slightly angry. "Peeping Tom. Pervert. Damn profiteer. What are you doing here?" "I think, at least for this room, I should be early." Luochio smiled. "It seems that Miss Long is still wary of me. If it's because of what happened last time, then I apologize to you again." "Apologize?" The true dragon of the divine land could still restrain herself if she did not mention that incident. But once it was mentioned, she felt ashamed all of a sudden. She sneered and said, "You've already hit me. Is it something that could be forgotten with an apology? Then, how about I owe you a request?" Luocio thought for a while and said, "As long as it doesn't break the principle of the deal, I'll agree to it. Of course, I'll consider the specific request." Long Shuo sneered. "It's based on the price that Su Zijuan gave you last time, right? I know you're not that kind. If Miss Long feels that this is a very bad memory, I can also help you erase it." Boss Luo gave a compromise. "If you want to erase it, you should do it yourself." Kelowna Shinryu couldn't suppress her anger anymore and raised her voice. Boss Luo said, "This may be a little difficult because for me, this is also a very good memory. I think I'll never forget Miss Long's appearance at that time. A crying woman is actually very beautiful. If I really forget it, it will be a regret for me." You. What nonsense are you talking about?" Kelowna Shinryu suddenly felt a little dizzy. She rubbed her forehead and calmed herself down. "Let's not talk about this first. You haven't told me what you're doing here." "Because I received a request, so I came in." Boss Luo smiled. "But I can't tell you the content of the request." "Humph, I'm not interested." Long Shirua snorted. "Sister Long." At this moment, the little butterfly monster opened her butterfly wings and hurriedly flew over from the end of the corridor. Long Shirua turned her head and looked at Luocio, who was in the living room. Then she looked at the little butterfly monster and her own appearance. She became a little flustered. "Wait, don't come over. Stop." Although the little butterfly monster had the power of a high-level monster, she was still a newbie in the monster world. Hearing this, she was stunned. When she came back to her senses, she couldn't stop and directly hit Long Shuo. Seeing this, the true dragon of the divine land reacted quickly. With a wave of his hand, he stopped the impudent butterfly demon and slapped it. Slapped it down. Whoosh! Finally, Luo Dance didn't appear in the sight of that profiteer. She stopped at the end of the corridor. Who knew if this profiteer would be beastly when he saw Luo Dance's lustful appearance? This profiteer seemed to be very interested in Luo Dance all the time. Finally, Luo Dance stopped. Kelowna Shinryu breathed a sigh of relief and subconsciously wiped her forehead. Unexpectedly, her continuous movement loosened the bath towel on her body and directly slipped down from her chest. She only felt that her chest was suddenly loosened. She subconsciously looked down and found that the bath towel had completely retreated to her abdomen in a few milliseconds. Time seemed to slow down, and everything entered a state of slow motion. In fact, her mind was operating at a high speed at this time, so everything became extremely slow in front of her eyes. Seeing the bath towel falling off little by little, Shinryu slightly opened her mouth, and then a chill invaded her body, making her shiver. She subconsciously stretched out her hand to catch the falling towel and quickly glanced at the living room from the corner of her eyes. That profiteer blinked at this time. Obviously, he had seen everything. She didn't know whether it was shyness or noisy emotions erupting in her heart like a volcano. Even she herself couldn't predict what she would do in the next moment. Boss Luo quickly waved his hand at the moment. Finally, the bath towel completely fell down and folded on the ground. And Kelowna Shinryu's body was instantly changed into a set of black and white maid costume. "Wow, Sister Long, you look so good in this costume." The little butterfly monster who fell down on the ground looked up and blurted out. At this time, the true dragon of godly land stared at the clothes on his body in a daze. Instantly, his face was hot, but his face was livid. "Profiteer, how many times are you going to humiliate me?" Seeing this, Boss Luo had to snap his fingers, and the black and white maid costume on Shinryu's body automatically dispersed, and then changed into a set of ordinary clothes, a simple white shirt and jeans. "Sorry, because I was in a rush, my first reaction was..." Boss Luo shook his head. "Don't worry, I can make myself forget the memory just now." Kelowna Shinryu finally exploded at this time. Her body swelled up, and a huge force instantly crushed the door frame, the wall, and the corridor. She lowered her head and walked step by step into the living room, her long hair fluttering in the wind. You said to forget. What's the difference between this and a free prostitute? What kind of profiteer do you think I am? If you dare turn into a child for me again. Come on. The Kelowna Shinryu in front of him, seemed to be in a strange state. Boss Luo watched as she walked in front of him, her fist exploding with Shinryu's power, and without any hesitation at all, she didn't hesitate to punch towards his chest. Boss Luo frowned. Before she attacked, he finally used his power in the end. He took a step forward and grabbed her wrist first, whispering in a low voice, "The Miss Long I know is very gentle. Do you feel better?" A trace of pink mist came out of Shinryu's body. It was very faint, and it instantly dissipated into the air very quickly. Long Shiraw, who came back to her senses, looked at her wrist that was grabbed and met with this profiteer. Luocio's clear eyes. She was stunned for a moment. Then she suddenly used all her strength to shake off Boss Luo's hand, and suddenly, with a strong force, she shook off Boss Luo's hand. Just now, forget what I said. Long Shiraw suddenly became expressionless. Nothing happened. As long as you're okay. Luocio nodded. Didn't you just say that you would agree to my request? She lowered her head and suddenly asked. Luocio said seriously, "Are you going to propose it now?" Long Shiraw raised her head, looking straight into Luocio's eyes, opened her mouth, then snorted coldly. "You wish. This request, when I think about it, I will definitely make you lose a lot of money. You just wait for me. Then, please be merciful." Boss Luo nodded with a smile. Humph. Shinryu lightly snorted, then strode out of the living room and pulled up the little butterfly who stuck her head out from the corridor. "Sister Long, where are we going? I haven't said hello to Boss yet." "Change your clothes." "I didn't say you can't say hello." Long Shiraw muttered. "Do you want him to see your naked body like this?" The little butterfly thought for a while, but Boss saw me when I broke out of the cocoon. What a sinful beast. Shinryu's face couldn't help but turn green. It was obviously impossible for her to go back immediately. Muttering like this, they found an empty room and walked in to change their clothes. When the servant girl came back with the tea tray, Boss Luo stood quietly, looking at his palm without moving. "Master, just now." "Master." Luocio was still looking at his palm, but slowly said, I lost. I couldn't control myself." Luocio slowly raised his palm, then scratched his face. His eyes faintly became chaotic. When I saw her, I really had an impulse to get this bright soul in my hand. The porcelain fell to the ground, and the sound of breaking suddenly sounded. A gentle force directly bumped into Luocio's arms. The servant girl had already taken control of Luocio's body. "Please don't become like the previous one, Master." She raised her head and revealed an unprecedentedly flustered expression. Hearing this, Luocio's fingers loosened a little. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, then slowly exhaled. "It seems that I pushed myself too hard." Luocio, who opened his eyes again, calmed down. "I made you worry. It's all right now." "Really?" For the first time, she didn't have her previous confidence. "As long as you're always by my side." Luocio lowered his head, kissing her. In the room, Long Shiraw, who had changed into her original clothes, was tidying up her clothes in front of the mirror. This was also a memory that was worth keeping. I think I will never forget Miss Long's appearance at that time. If I really forget it, it will become a regret for me. Clap. The true dragon of godly land slapped her own face with both hands. This action startled the little butterfly monster who was wearing underwear with her hands behind her back, and the buckle that was fastened with great difficulty suddenly broke open. "Sister Long? There are mosquitoes." Long Shiraw said indifferently, then turned around. "What, do I look like I lose my temper so easily?" Didn't she just lose her temper? Butterfly monster pursed her lips and didn't speak. Long Shiraw sighed, then came behind Luo Dance. "Let me help you." "Hey, hey, hey." Luo Dance stuck out her tongue, and then suddenly said, "Sister Long, do you really hate Boss? Why do you quarrel with him every time you meet?" Long Shiraw opened her mouth, muttering, "Probably, It's because I'm afraid. Afraid? Luo Dance was stunned. But boss is very nice, not scary at all. That's the most terrible thing. Kelowna's Shinryu sighed. Even I, sometimes, am afraid of myself. I'm afraid that I will suddenly lose control one day. If Kelowna's Shinryu is out of control, who in Kelowna can stop it? What's more, that guy, if he loses control, can you imagine what our world will become? Boss, he won't. Butterfly Monster suddenly turned around before putting on her underwear. He won't. Looking at the child who was about to cry, Longshaw shook her head. You have big breasts, you're right, okay? Can you put on your clothes before you talk? Oh. Luo Dance pouted her small mouth and responded. Longshaw shook her head, thinking that it would be best if it could be so simple. She continued to fasten the strap of Luo Dance's underwear. Kelowna's Shinryu suddenly said, No wonder it's so hard to fasten it. You've grown even taller, little girl. Don't drink milk tomorrow. Sigma, degree, winky face. Chapter 1363. Inside the Torito clan's castle. After meeting with the acting Grand Duke of the clan, Hui Yao, the first Tower Master, did not immediately rush to meet up with Long Shua. Instead, he quietly hid himself. Speaking of which, when one's strength had reached such a level that one could be called an old monster by an ordinary inhuman, it seemed that he would more or less hide and peep at everything that happened. Whether it was in the modern world or in the inhuman domain where there were many inhumans, there were fewer and fewer things that could arouse their interest. On the contrary, the things that could arouse their interest were intrinsically implicated. If they did not control it well, the consequences and impact would be very huge. If it was just Fafner's occasional madness, Hui Yao could just treat it as Fafner's sudden spasm. He would not personally intervene. At most, he would just let the other Tower Masters deal with it on his behalf. Initially, he intended to let the Master of the Secret Steel Tower deal with it. The Secret Steel is gone. When Hui Yao appeared in front of Baligan, there was nothing he could hide. Logically speaking, the Secret Steel should have appeared at the first moment. He did not directly summon the Secret Steel, nor did he intend to let the Secret Steel know that his whereabouts had been exposed. He only intended to let the Secret Steel show up on his own. As long as the way of dealing with things was different, the results would be different. What were these guys discussing? The first Tower Master, who had been silently observing everything in the ruins of the clan's castle, could not help but shake his head after a long while. He was not a person who inquired about information. Naturally, he would not be like a spy who kept waiting for the results to appear. Shaking his head, the Tower Master of Hui Yao waved his magic wand. A mirror appeared in front of him. In the Magician Association's headquarters, on the 200th floor, in the Thunder Tower Master's office. You're too impulsive this time. You didn't even inform us beforehand. Even if you're a magician, you still have to abide by the rules of the club. The voice came from one of the pitch-black mirrors on the table. The Thunder Tower Master, who was sipping on his coffee calmly, looked at the few black mirrors and said calmly, But from the looks of it, I at least got some results. Many times, opportunities are like shooting stars. You don't know when it will appear, but all you need to do is to grab it without hesitation the moment it appears. The Golden Dragon is wreaking havoc. The Secret Steel and Hui Yao have left the Secret Arts Tower at the same time, and the Crimson Flame couple was unexpectedly grounded by Hui Yao, leaving only an ordinary good guy, Thunder. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and it's a pity to miss it. Please don't bring your personal feelings into the day-to-day operations of the club. Another voice came from the other mirror. All these years, you've never given up on the inhuman domain. We all know why. We're not against you wanting revenge, but at least you've made a corresponding contribution while enjoying the resources of the club. The seats aren't fixed. You're not the only one who's suitable for the magician brand. Oh, it seems that so many of my colleagues have a lot of prejudice against me. The Thunder Tower Master smiled and then narrowed his eyes. Or is this the first seat? Sir, the fool. Idea? No matter who it is, you just have to remember that this is the rule of the club. Don't take it for granted that you're the second seat of the magician and enjoy the benefits. The Thunder Tower Master put down his coffee cup and pressed his hands on the table. He smiled and said, I've been quite free these years, unlike all of you who have done so many small things. Yaris. A cold voice came from one of the mirrors. The Thunder Tower Master sneered and said, "Didn't you say that even the seats have to follow the rules? What's the rule of the club? The seats should be addressed with a name tag. Isn't it written like this?" Umph. The mirror suddenly dimmed and then shattered. Obviously, the other side of the mirror had been cut off. "Magician, what are you planning to do?" The mirror on the side was silent for a moment and then suddenly asked. The Thunder Tower Master smiled and said, "Nothing much. I just feel that I'm not used to being free for so many years. I don't want to miss you guys and have many subordinates. When I'm lonely, I want to find someone to talk to. So, I suddenly had an idea. I want to find a few servants who can help me make coffee and run errands." "You're planning to." A low voice suddenly came from the mirror. The Thunder Tower Master shrugged. "We understand." The few mirrors suddenly quieted down. The people behind them seemed to have entered another private communication channel. Not long after, the mirrors disappeared one by one. When the last mirror disappeared, the voice sounded again. "Magician will tell the first, the fool, the general idea. Next, we'll discuss this operation. If there are no accidents, you should get the support of the majority and get the support of the operation. It's fine if I'm alone." The Thunder Tower Master waved his hand. "Otherwise, the days are too long and there's nothing to do to pass the time." Then, the voice of the mirror sounded again. However, at this time, the Thunder Tower Master directly waved his hand and broke the mirror that seemed to have something to say. This was because at this time, a new mirror was slowly forming in the office. The Thunder Tower Master narrowed his eyes and then sat up straight. The newly formed mirror only reflected the Thunder Tower Master's appearance at this time. It looked like an ordinary mirror. However, a voice had already sounded. It was the voice of the first Tower Master, Hui Yao. "Thunder? Is it convenient for you to talk now?" The Thunder Tower Master said slowly, "Hui Yao, I was still thinking about whether I should report to you. I didn't expect you to take the initiative to call me." At this time, Hui Yao's appearance appeared on the mirror, as well as some of the environment behind him. "I'm still in the territory of the Red Eye clan. However, Fafnir has been recovered. I should be back soon," the Tower Master said directly. The Thunder Tower Master smiled immediately. "That's great. You don't know how hard it is for me to deal with these refugees." The Tower Master smiled and said, "Don't worry. We still have the ability to compensate for such a small loss." The Thunder Tower Master nodded. "That's right. After all, the association has accumulated a lot of wealth over the years. By the way, how long will it take for you to come back?" The Tower Master suddenly asked, "Thunder, when did you start drinking black coffee?" The Thunder Tower Master was stunned. He subconsciously looked at the coffee cup on the table and said calmly, "I heard that this thing has a better effect of refreshing. Isn't it all your fault? Why didn't you let me rest in the middle of the night?" "I'm really sorry. Don't worry, I'll be back soon." The Tower Master smiled and then closed the mirror bit by bit. "Then, I'll see you later." The Thunder Tower Master nodded. Before the mirror disappeared completely, he laughed in a low voice. "After we meet, I'll definitely give you a big surprise. Hui Yao, I wonder what kind of surprise it will be." Suddenly, the voice of the first Tower Master, Hui Yao, came from behind the Thunder Tower Master. However, it was not really behind the Thunder Tower Master. The voice came from the window behind the Thunder Tower Master from the night sky. The Thunder Tower Master's eyes narrowed. He slowly stood up and turned around. Outside the window, he saw a figure floating. Bang! At that moment, the window shattered. The broken glass was like a sharp blade that quickly entered the room. However, these sharp glass shattered right beside the Thunder Tower Master and did not hurt him at all. At that moment, the figure became clear. It was the first Tower Master, Hui Yao. The two of them stared at each other for a while. Then, the Thunder Tower Master suddenly smiled and said, "How convenient. You're the one who controls the inhuman domain. But to teleport back from such a far place without using a jump, it must have consumed a lot of energy. How did you know? Is it because of the black coffee?" "No, it's not that the Thunder Tower doesn't drink black coffee. It's just that they don't drink that much. It's something else that made me see through it. The Tower Master looked at him expressionlessly. He was thinking, with the current economic situation of the association, if it was the Thunder Tower Master himself, how could he say that the association was rich? That was right. This association was a complete mess. It was in the red every month. Even the current Tower Master knew about it. Of course, only the current Tower Masters knew about it. If the association was really rich, why would they agree to the Queen of Britain's employment and rent out a divine weapon like the Holy Spear for a few minds in Britain? However, other people would only think that the association's reach was too far, and they had ulterior motives for Britain. Other things? Which aspect? The Thunder Tower Master could not help but be curious. I think there's no need for me to tell you about the association in detail. Even if you were the former first Tower Master of the Secret Arts Tower, Hui Yao sighed softly. Mr. Yaris, you shouldn't have appeared again. Little brat. The Thunder Tower Master shook his head. You've made some achievements over the years, but you've completely forgotten. Who was the one who taught you your first magic technique? That's why I only exiled you last time. Mr. Yaris. Heh. The Thunder Tower Master sneered and shook his head. Back then, if it wasn't for that Shinryu from the east who interfered, I'm afraid you'd be a useless person now. Without that Shinryu, I'd like to see how much progress you've made over the past 100 years. I suddenly feel that it's too boring to just compete with you in magic. By the way, I found some interesting things over the past few years. I'll let you have a look. As he spoke, vortexes appeared one after another behind the Thunder Tower Master. In the beginning, a strange creature that looked like an alien slowly walked out of one of the vortexes. Soon, dozens of such strange creatures walked out. They stood behind the Thunder Tower Master in a dense crowd. These are the Hui Yao Tower Master frowned. The moment these creatures appeared, he could feel a violent and crazy aura. These creatures seem to only know how to destroy. They're called Prometheus. They've only been successfully developed in recent years. The Thunder Tower Master smirked and waved his hand. In an instant, the strange creatures that filled the room. Prometheus sprang out crazily and grabbed onto the outer wall of the tower. Then, they began to climb down on all fours and rush down crazily. Upon seeing this, Hui Yao frowned. He was about to wave the magic wand in his hand, but he couldn't move his arm. He couldn't help but be stunned. His body was already entangled by many transparent threads. This won't do. The Thunder Tower Master's palm was also entangled with the transparent threads of the tree roots. He moved his fingers, and those threads instantly tightened, binding Hui Yao's entire body. This gift hasn't been fully opened yet, Hui Yao. So, it's just a spiritual projection that came back. No wonder it's so easy to catch him. But then again, it's just a spiritual projection. Hui Yao, you've really become arrogant. Suddenly, a shrill voice faintly came from below. In the square in front of the lobby of the Magicians Association, an inhuman was directly pressed on top of a monster. And this monster that suddenly appeared was actually constantly tearing and devouring the inhuman's flesh and blood. He looked up subconsciously. From the tower of the Magicians Association's headquarters, monsters that seemed to have figured it out were crazily crawling down, like locusts. After changing back to their original clothes, Longshaw and Luo Dance didn't stay for long and planned to go back to the living room. Miss Butterfly Monster looked a little excited and walked briskly in front. Upon seeing this, Kelowna's Shinryu complained, "You'll lose your value if you take the initiative." Little Butterfly Monster, who didn't quite understand the meaning of this sentence, turned back. Master Shinryu simply waved his hand disdainfully. Go, go, go. Sister Long, hurry up. This small episode didn't affect the mood of the little butterfly monster at this moment, and she trotted all the way. Longshaw shook her head and then glanced at the bag in her hand. Inside was the shirt and jeans that she had just changed out of. She muttered to herself in a low voice, "I've already washed it." "No, I haven't washed it at all." "Well, it's barely folded. Take it back." "No, isn't it a bit too?" "Ahem. I don't need it anymore. I'll get back to you. Don't put on those messy clothes for me in the future." "Tut. I don't believe that I'll be stuck here forever." As she muttered, she had already walked to the door of the living room. She saw the little butterfly monster directly push the door open and then said with a surprised look, "Wow, Sister Yi, you're also here." Kelowna Shinryu's mouth suddenly twitched. Then she subconsciously threw the bag with the clothes in her hand up to the ceiling. Then she stared with her dead fish eyes. In short, she didn't have a good expression and slowly walked in. Looking at this butterfly monster who seemed to have forgotten her mother because of her father, Kelowna Shinryu secretly scolded, "Zhongshan Butterfly, you're helping outsiders. Sit down, Miss Long. I've also prepared some snacks for you." Boss Luo smiled and made an inviting gesture at this time. Kelowna Shinryu pretended not to see, directly kicking Huang Jinlong, who was lying on the sofa, and then sat down, taking out a cigarette box. Unexpectedly, not only Luochio and Miss Maid, but also the little butterfly monster curiously looked at this Kelowna Shinryu. Shinryu stared back at them. Her face was full of displeasure. "What are you looking at? Haven't you seen a woman smoking?" Luochio gave a start, then waved his hand. An ashtray appeared on the small tea table next to her seat. That was very considerate of him. But at this moment, the true dragon of Shinjo took back the cigarette case, as if it was against him. She shrugged. "I'm not in the mood now." Sister Long looks like a child in a fit of pique. Seeing this, the little butterfly monster didn't have any scruples. She was the type that spoke whatever came to her mind. Naturally, she didn't know how to recognize the atmosphere, which made the real dragon's face turn green. "Zhongshan Butterfly." She secretly made a drill with her finger, which scared the little butterfly monster, and she quickly held the teacup, covering her mouth. She sat up straight, but her back was trembling. "How's the sweetness? This is specially prepared by Yu Yi." Boss Luo smiled to ease the atmosphere. "I use Chinese roses picked from outside. They're quite fresh." "Yes." The little butterfly monster smiled sweetly to Miss Maid. "Thank you, Sister Yu Yi." Miss Maid chuckled. "There's still some fresh ones over there. I'll give them to you later." "Okay." The little butterfly monster felt a chill on her back and showed a limited smile. Changing the topic, I'm on a diet recently. I don't want it. "Well, that's a pity," Miss Maid said regretfully, but she didn't blame her. However, learning to manage your body is also a reflection of growing up. It's not bad. Remember to keep your appearance so that the person you like will feel different every day. Is that so? The little butterfly monster thought. Miss May continued. "In fact, you don't need to dress up. You just need to keep clean. Of course, if you can keep smiling, you won't look unapproachable. You just need to pay attention to your hair, clothes, and so on. You won't look sloppy. In fact, your current appearance is already very good." Intentionally or not, the servant girl looked at the true dragon and smiled. "Miss Dragon, do you think I'm right?" "Fancy flowers." Kelowna's Shinryu snorted, holding her cheek and turning away. "Country people don't have so many tricks." Then, she secretly glanced at her hair. "Oh, there's mixed hair." Boss Luo looked at Miss Maid, shaking his head slightly, and then said softly, "By the way, Miss Long, do you know why Teresa fainted?" "I'm talking about her." "This woman?" Long Shuruo glanced at Teresa, who had not woken up yet. Only then did she know her name. Shinryu rolled his eyes. "Didn't you say you came here first? Since you know her, how can I know what happened to her if you don't know it yourself? Anyway, she was like this when we arrived. She was bitten on her neck. Don't you know what happened?" "We weren't here at that time." Boss Luo shook his head. Long Shuruo frowned. "Why? Do you suspect that I have something to do with this?" Luochio looked at her eyes. "The Miss Long I know, of course, won't do this kind of thing. Of course I suspect you." Her pretty face blushed. Kelowna's Shinryu couldn't help thinking that it must be the residue of the Zhongshan butterfly's powder in the water. She held her cheek and turned away. "I don't know either." Indeed, when he came here, he saw her lying on the ground. "I looked around the house and didn't find anything. Then you guys came back." "I see." Luochio pondered. "What's your relationship with this woman? You seem to care about her." Kelowna's Shinryu glanced at him and asked indifferently. "She's my companion on this trip," Boss Luo said casually. "Although we don't have a good relationship, it's our fault for not taking care of her." She felt that this profiteer's current state was a little strange. Although there were many criticisms in her heart, but from their previous interactions, she had to admit that this profiteer was quite good at taking care of his customers. It's just a little bit of HP. With your ability, you can save her even if she dies. Why are you so concerned? It's not all your fault. Kelowna's Shinryu said impatiently, but it was comforting. Thank you. Boss Luo smiled. Her pretty face blushed. It must be because the residue wasn't completely removed. Yes, it must be. /1_M. Chapter 1364. The problem about Teresa was put aside for the time being. She wasn't related to him anyway. Long Shirua was thinking about Hui Yao at this time. It seemed that this guy had left for some time. According to Hui Yao's speed, it shouldn't take long for him to go back and forth. Every second he stayed would make him feel uncomfortable. Kelowna's Shinryu sighed secretly. He didn't expect to be in such a dilemma. He wasn't a young girl who didn't know anything. How could he not know what was going on? He just couldn't get over it. Indeed, Shinryu wasn't the kind of person who always liked to be in a disadvantageous position. Humph. It's just that after being single for a long time, he felt that everything was beautiful and had an illusion. Long Shirua calmed down and then said, "What's your relationship with Fafner? If I'm not wrong, you should have known each other before." "Miss Long, are you here for Milo-chan this time?" Luochio asked. He already knew from Miss Maid's explanation that the current state of the Golden Dragon's corpse was caused by Shinryu. "Milo-chan?" Long Shirua couldn't help but be startled. "It seems that you really know this pervert. You even know his boring side business." Luochio smiled and said, "It's probably fate. The world is very strange, just like how we met Miss Long here." Kelowna's Shinryu suddenly stared at him. "Who's fated with you?" Boss Luo didn't care about this attitude. "So, is there anything special that you came to Fafner this time?" Sister Long came this time to help Fafner give birth to a child. The little butterfly monster heard this and easily sold out the purpose of Kelowna's visit to Shinryu. Zhongshan butterfly. Shinryu couldn't help but stare at this butterfly again. He always felt that this thing would be abducted sooner or later. "Have children." Boss Luo opened his mouth slightly. Of course, he wouldn't think of it that way. He just felt that the way she put it was rather subtle. "Don't overthink it." At this moment, Shinryu couldn't calm down. His originally cold face suddenly became hot again. Long Shirua almost blurted it out. She glared at him and said, "I only owe him a favor, so I came here to carry on the Golden Dragon's ancestral line. Bah, help it give birth. I mean help it mate successfully." His tongue seemed to be in a knot, and he couldn't figure it out. No matter which way he put it, it would always have a subtle effect. At this moment, the true dragon of the godly land was really going crazy. Seeing this, Boss Luo smiled and said, "I heard that the last golden dragon is in a state of fertility difficulties, and the Magician Association has been distressed for a long time. Miss Long is here to solve this problem, right?" "You can say that. Have you found a way to solve it?" Luochio asked. Shinryu shook his head and said subconsciously, "No, this thing is a bit, how should I put it, a gender disorder. But even so, if it still has male instincts, there will always be a way. But I didn't expect it to cut itself off. That's really..." Boss Luo heard this and slightly opened his mouth. He subconsciously looked at the golden dragon that was occupied by Shinryu and thrown to the ground. "It's over. I just asked a question casually, and they blew everything out of the blue. It's really over." Yes, not only did it not help Mr. Fafner, but it also caused him to go berserk. The little butterfly sighed. "I always feel sorry for Mr. Hui Yao. It's over. Besides self-destructing, this Zhongshan butterfly was going to continue to betray me. Kelowna's Shinryu couldn't even stop it in time." "Hui Yao," Luochio suddenly said. "Is he a white-robed young man who looks very approachable and has a very long magic wand in his hand?" Luo Dance asked curiously. "Boss, do you know Mr. Hui Yao?" Luochio smiled and said, "You can say that we've met once." "So, Miss Long's so-called return of a favor is referring to this Mr. Hui Yao? Why are you so nosy about my affairs?" Kelowna's Shinryu snorted. Luochio said casually, "Because I can't help but want to know more about Miss Long." Kelowna's Shinryu's breathing suddenly stopped for a moment. He couldn't help but say angrily, What nonsense are you talking about? Aren't you afraid that you, a maid, will trouble me? It doesn't matter to me. Miss Maid covered her mouth and chuckled. I'm happy to see Master interested in something. It was like being trapped in a swamp that he couldn't get out of, and it was a whirlpool-like swamp created by the Master and the maid. At this moment, the true dragon of the godly land felt as if she was about to be dragged into the depths of a swamp, or like a commodity on display. This sense of danger made her sober up all of a sudden. The power of Shinryu in her body began to cleanse her body from top to bottom. After the blessing of this ancient power, her spirit was suddenly emptied. She slowly sighed and suddenly retorted, Really? You want to know more about me? That's easy. Then come to my hospital and I can give you a discount. Dance, next time when you see these two coming to register, remember to bring out 2 folding stools. Don't let them stand and wait. It's impolite. Oh, okay. The little butterfly monster subconsciously responded. Kelowna's Shinryu felt that this butterfly belonged to the Long family and not the Luo family. She suddenly felt relieved. Unexpectedly, the little butterfly monster immediately said, But Sister Long, when does the hospital register? There are usually no patients, so there's no need to line up. The true dragon, who had finally calmed down under the cleansing of the true dragon's power, suddenly felt terrible again. The true dragon, who had already given up on the Zhongshan butterfly, turned to look at Luo Chio as if she didn't hear anything. Anyway, I'll take Fafner away. She said indifferently, If you want to take action, hurry up. Even if you can't beat it, I won't wait for death. Don't dilly-dally. She seemed to be unafraid of death. But I've never said that I'll leave it. Luochio smiled and said, If Miss Long wants to take it away, you shouldn't ask for my opinion, but its own opinion. How dare it? Wait, your goal is not Fafner? Long Shiro was in disbelief. For now, yes. Boss Luo said ambiguously. Kelowna's Shinryu pondered for a moment and then looked at him with suspicion. She did not see what this profiteer was selling. She thought for a moment and said, You really won't do anything behind my back? Boss Luo could not help but ask curiously, Miss Long, in your opinion, are we really so untrustworthy? I remember that Miss Long has also used our service before. Shinryu snorted. Since you don't plan to take Fafner away, that's naturally the best. Don't worry, we're waiting for someone. When that person arrives, we'll leave immediately. You're waiting for Mr. Hui Yao? Luochio suddenly asked. Long Shiro did not answer. It was a tacit agreement. Luochio then said, If that's the case, then I'm afraid this matter will be somewhat delayed. That Mr. Hui Yao seems to be in trouble. What's the matter? Kelowna's Shinryu frowned slightly. Luochio waved his hand in front of him. A light screen that was half the height of a person slowly began to extend out from the sofa area, a curved screen. Boss Luo, who had already lost to Miss Maid, naturally did not intend to continue blocking his perception. It was like reopening the social media app. All kinds of messages that he received but did not receive any notifications directly flooded the screen. When the light screen was completely expanded into a semicircle, looking at the scene that appeared on the screen, the little butterfly suddenly exclaimed, It's Mr. Hui Yao. What's going on? Looking at the screen, Hui Yao's body seemed to be restrained by something. He seemed to be confronting someone. Long Shiro frowned immediately. Luochio tapped his finger, and the images on the screen instantly split. Not only did they see the person who attacked Hui Yao, but they could also see some of the things that were happening in the headquarters of the Magician Association. This Mr. Hui Yao seems to have met his former enemy. Boss Luo's heart moved, and the image of the Thunder Tower Master on the screen began to enlarge. This is Thunder. He's also one of the Tower Masters. He probably won't attack Hui Yao. I'm afraid this old man is not the Thunder Tower Master that you know. Miss Long. Luochio then said, This Mr. Hui Yao, please address him as Yaris. Yaris, it's this guy? Kelowna's Shinryu was stunned. After that, he did not say anything and just frowned as if he was thinking about something. Sister Long, do you know him as well? The little butterfly monster was confused and somewhat panicked. This was because on the other set of images, a bloody scene appeared in the Magician Association. A group of strange creatures were wantonly slaughtering and tearing apart the Inhumans. It was not that these Inhumans did not resist, but this group of strange creatures had a terrifying recovery ability. Even if they were blown up to the point that only their heads were left, they could quickly recover through cell division. This was unexpected. Moreover, these strange creatures directly charged into the crowd. Many of the Inhumans were injured because they were accidentally injured. Because of this, the Inhumans in the outer area could not use a wider range of attacks or attacks that were too powerful, resulting in such a miserable situation. Moreover, there was a lack of people who could give orders on the spot. It was almost a mess. Yaris is Hui Yao's first teacher. Long Shua said quickly. Hui Yao was Yari's student at that time. Later, something happened, so he left Europe to cultivate. Yaris was not only Hui Yao's first teacher, but also the first tower master of the Secret Arts Tower when the Inhuman Realm was not completed and the Magician Association was still stationed in the modern world. But the current first tower master is Mr. Hui Yao. Luo Dance blinked her eyes. There was an internal strife in the association. It was many years ago, even more than Long Shirua said. She suddenly looked at the club's boss and the maid, then shook her head and said, that year, Hui Yao was the winner of the civil strife, and Yaris was exiled after his magic power was abolished. At that time, Yaris' magic power was abolished. I saw it with my own eyes. I didn't expect that after so many years, he could still make a comeback. What's wrong with these monsters? I feel like I've seen them somewhere. Miss Long, you've seen them before. Luochio suddenly said. I've seen them before? Shinryu was stunned. Then he frowned and thought of something. You mean at that time? Boss Luo nodded. Mr. Hui Yao looks very dangerous. Little Butterfly pointed at the screen at this time. At this moment, Hui Yao's body seemed to be eroded by something, and his expression was slightly painful. Kelowna's Shinryu frowned. What's the matter? Is he afraid of Thunder's body? Without much hesitation, Shinryu's power burst out instantly, and a golden airflow flowed on Long Shua's body. Dance, stay here and wait for me to come back. Seeing that Kelowna's Shinryu was about to break through the villa's ceiling and rush out, Boss Luo suddenly said, Miss Long, if you rush over now, how long will it take? Shinryu's feet had just left the ground when he suddenly stopped. What are you trying to do? Do you need me to send you over? Boss Luo suggested. It'll only take about 1 second. Profiteer, you're actually robbing a burning house. Kelowna's Shinryu looked at him in disbelief. Boss Luo shook his head and said, if you really have such thoughts, then my suggestion would probably be do you need us to solve this problem or something like that. Don't worry. This teleportation is a free experience. We just hope that Miss Long will be satisfied with our service and slightly change her opinion of us. Long Shirua believed that if she rushed over at full speed, she would be able to arrive in a short time. After all, Fafner only took a few hours to go crazy and destroy all the way to this place. The Inhuman territory was actually not vast, and the Inhumans were actually squeezed in such a small place and lived carefully. But even if it was a short time, there might be more unexpected situations. Obviously, a short time was not as safe as a second. The premise was that she wanted to enjoy the other party's free service. Although it was free, she still borrowed the other party's power, which made Shinryu extremely unhappy. Free? Good. I like free lunches the most. Then what are you waiting for? Why aren't you doing it? Don't worry. I'll give you a good review later. But, at least, she couldn't lose in words. I hope Miss Long can solve this problem smoothly. Boss Luo waved his hand and said, but please remember, no matter what kind of trouble you encounter, as long as Miss Long needs me, I will appear in front of you. After their eyes met, both of them disappeared from each other's sight. The moment Luochio disappeared from her sight, Long Shua couldn't help but sigh. She felt like a prey that had stepped into a trap and was slowly falling into the hunter's trap. In the next moment, when Kelowna's Shinryu appeared in the square of the Magician Association headquarters, Kelowna's Shinryu suddenly had an unexpected thought. Speaking of which, why didn't I ask him to directly teleport radiance? So angry. Chapter 1365. In the living room of the villa. When Kelowna's Shinryu disappeared, the little butterfly monster subconsciously rubbed her eyes and looked at the screen that Boss Luo usually used to peep, to observe. She immediately found Long Shurua's figure in the chaotic square. Wow, Sister Long really went over. Boss is so awesome. The little butterfly monster looked at him with admiration. She always thought the boss was awesome. He protected her from the first time she broke out of her cocoon and turned into a butterfly. He made the aunt and the uncle leave with a smile all the time. She didn't understand why Sister Long was so unfriendly to the boss. She even murmured the boss's name when she was sleeping. What a dishonest guy. Her knowledge level became richer after the adult college entrance examination, but her cognition didn't change much since she left the bun shop. Those two kind old people were like the second tree monster who raised her. Their influence would follow her for the rest of her life. She remembered the aunt said that if she liked someone, she should say it out loud. At that time, she told the boss that she liked him loudly, but she seemed to have misunderstood the aunt's meaning. How could the humans be so narrow? They were the ones who created the words and gave the word like Tahani. Like appreciation, admiration, worship, happiness, they were all like. The dictionary clearly explained so many things. But why did it have to be admiration and love? What was love? She didn't know, but she instinctively felt that the boss also liked her when he saw her. Like her. Wasn't it enough to like him? Miss Pianxian, this is the freshly brewed rose honey. Miss May brought a cup of sweet drink out of nowhere. Clearly, it was just flower tea just now. This was simply like a reward. The butterfly demon, who had no resistance to sweetness and never considered giving up on sweetness, instantly forgot about the true dragon's warning. Without saying anything else, she picked it up and smelled it. So fragrant. Miss Maid suddenly asked, Miss Pianxian, you don't seem to be worried about Sister Long at all. The little butterfly monster thought for a moment and said, because aren't Sister Yu Yi and the boss here watching? Miss Maid chuckled and said, the free experience is to send Miss Long there. But if you do it again, you should be charged. Miss Long, you seem to hate making deals with us. The little butterfly monster opened her mouth and subconsciously looked at the boss. She blurted out, Then can I pay for Sister Long? No, but I don't know if it's enough. My mother only left me that white jade token. Last time was already. Don't worry, your Sister Long will be fine. Luochio looked at her and said, also, remember one thing in the future. What? The little butterfly blinked. Luochio said softly, when you can't do something with all your might, and you feel sad, or even painful because you can't do it, and you can't find any help, then you will consider asking me to help. Do you remember? The little butterfly monster nodded subconsciously. Yes, I'll remember it. Give her more. Boss Luo smiled and let Mississippi Maid start to eat. The little butterfly monster drank up a cup of rose honey at once. In this short period of time, the little butterfly monster just stuck out her tongue. Then I'll drink one more cup. In the conversation and later smile on the screen, Shinryu had been killing a lot of strange creatures. One against a group so majestic. Pianxian, this child, is probably watching me nervously, worrying about me, thinking that the profiteer was still broadcasting his actions. Kelowna Shinryu felt like there was a surveillance camera installed at home, and someone was molesting him through the screen when he was taking a bath. He felt uncomfortable all over. The only thing that made him feel relieved was that the little butterfly monster was still worried about him behind the screen. Prometheus turned into ashes in the hands of Kelowna Shinryu. Even though it had a strong cell growth ability, it couldn't withstand Shinryu's attack. It had only been a short time since she teleported here, and she had already killed more than 20 Prometheus, the true dragon of the godly land. As one of the measurement units of combat power in the subworld that Miss Maid mentioned, could completely ignore this special creature in terms of strength. Due to her extremely fast speed, the Inhumans on the square couldn't see her clearly. No, Inhumans would associate this savior with the Eastern Shinryu who had harmed the Inhuman realm several times. Seeing that this mysterious and powerful woman had joined the battle and killed dozens of monsters in an instant, the Inhumans, who were originally scattered, began to organize themselves. In fact, they were caught off guard at the beginning. After all, excluding the tens of thousands of Inhumans who came to block the entrance of the Magician Association, there were many magicians in the association. When the attack happened, many of the magicians were still asleep. Seeing that the magicians of the association began to rush out of the tower in groups, and some reputable Inhumans among the Inhumans began to organize a counterattack, Long Shua felt like she had eaten a mouse. Actually, it didn't matter if she didn't come over. She shook her head and stomped hard on the ground. Then, her body shot up to the top of the tower like an arrow. This time, she had rushed over mainly because Hui Yao was in a crisis. To be honest, the life and death of these Inhumans was not something that the true dragon cared about. It would be better to say that it would be better if more of these Inhumans died because of natural and man-made disasters. Perhaps among the few who died, there would be people who would harm Kelowna in the future. On the 200th floor of the Magician Association, the silk threads wrapped around Hui Yao, or rather, Hui Yao's spiritual projection tightly. It made it difficult for him to even wave his magic wand. The Thunder Tower Master looked at it. There was not much joy on his face. Instead, he said slowly, "Once your spiritual projection is damaged, it will cause irreparable damage. Hui Yao, your goal is the ultimate magic, right? But once your spiritual projection is damaged, it's equivalent to your soul being damaged. This is obviously not a good thing for your ultimate goal. I know what I'm doing. You don't have to worry about it, Mr. Yaris." The Tower Master forced a smile at this time. At the same time, he tried to break free from these silk threads. However, it seemed that there was no effect. A pure spiritual projection can't break free from these silk threads. The Thunder Tower Master said calmly, "These threads are specially made. They can continuously absorb the target's mana. The more you struggle, the more powerful the mana you feed back to me. You're a spiritual body. This will only increase the amount of magic I get." "I see. Mr. Yaris, is this the reason why you regained your power?" Hui Yao was stunned. "These things, I'm afraid they won't stop until they have completely absorbed the target's power, right?" The Thunder Tower Master smiled and said, "Just as you thought. After you cripple my magic power, I crawled back from hell, step by step. So far, I don't know how many I've captured. This is all thanks to the free magician license system you set, Hui Yao." He suddenly asked, "What's the purpose of your return this time?" The Thunder Tower Master smiled in a relaxed manner. He opened his arms and said, "Hui Yao, how about coming back to my sect again? During the internal strife in the association, I didn't even hold a grudge against you. On the contrary, I even felt an unprecedented happiness. I never thought that the dull little boy under my sect would actually grow to surpass me one day. You're like a treasure. I've started to see too many possibilities in you. So, come back to my side and explore the ultimate of magic with me. I'll open the door to a new world for you. I'll let you know that other than the you in this world, there are many different versions of you. There are many different versions of you with different life trajectories. You'll enter the truly vast and boundless world from this narrow box." It seems that Mr. Yaris has had some enviable adventures all these years. The Tower Master of the Radiance Pagoda suddenly gave up on struggling against the restraints of the threads. His entire mental projection relaxed. "If possible, I really wish to sit down quietly with Mr. Yaris and discuss all kinds of difficult problems." "Oh, it seems that you still don't intend to enter my embrace, child." The Thunder Tower Master, Yaris, suddenly sighed and said with a face full of pity, "Hui Yao, opportunities don't wait for people. I'm not used to giving people too many opportunities." The silk threads wrapped around the spiritual projection suddenly contracted more intensely, as if they wanted to completely cut the spiritual projection apart. However, the Tower Master's expression became more and more solemn. A ray of light burst out from within. "You intend to detonate the spiritual projection?" Yaris suddenly felt that something was wrong. He also felt that it was somewhat inconceivable. Did this protective puppet really not care about the damage to his soul? Just as the spiritual projection's radiance reached its peak, the silk threads wrapped around the spiritual projection suddenly loosened. Yari's pupils contracted slightly. He saw a guy who shouldn't have appeared here, a guy who had looked at him as if he was looking at a passerby on the street. He had never taken him seriously. It was just like the look in his eyes back then. After more than 100 years, there was still no change. Oh, Yari's long time no see. So many years have passed, but it seems like your memory hasn't improved. Teacher? The light burst out from the spiritual projection suddenly stopped. Hui Yao looked at the valiant figure in front of him in astonishment. Why are you? Kelowna's Shinryu didn't turn around at this time. If you have anything to say, say it after we get rid of this old bastard. I was wondering why you were so weak. So, it's because your soul has left your body? Are you really not afraid of death? Teacher, this is called spiritual projection. Hui Yao subconsciously corrected him. Kelowna's Shinryu said, Who cares what it's called? It's almost the same thing anyway. I'm not in the mood to talk about these details with a little brat like you. I just want to beat someone up now. I've been in a bad mood since just now. No matter what, it was good that he didn't have to self-destruct his spiritual projection. Even if he had the means to reduce the damage to his soul by self-destructing his spiritual projection, it was not without a price. It was better to save as much as possible. Once again, he stabilized his spiritual projection. After breaking free from the silk thread, the owner of the Radiance Tower waved his wand directly. At the highest point of the Magician Association's headquarters, a huge stone bead suddenly broke open. Following that, water-like rays of light flowed out from the stone bead. In just a moment, the light completely covered the entire Magician Association's tower. This is a means to defend against external attacks. But now it can also be used to limit the spread of internal damage to the outside. The owner of the Radiance Tower said seriously, Teacher, if you don't mind, please make a big scene. Kelowna's Shinryu showed a bright smile on his face. He cracked his knuckles and said, You know me so well. You're so much better than a certain profiteer that I won't hold back. After saying that, he waved his fist. Seeing this, Yari's hurriedly crossed his hands, and layers upon layers of translucent, crystal-like shields stacked in front of him. In a flash, 10 layers had been stacked. For a magician, this was a defensive magic shield that was completely within the realm of high-level magic. Spell engraving, as expected of Mr. Yari's. The owner of the Radiance Tower couldn't help but marvel at this. This was a method that used the least amount of magic power to stack up a few high-level defensive magic spells. Moreover, it was faster and more suitable for use in actual combat. But it's like a piece of paper. However, under the fist of Kelowna's Shinryu, these 10 stacked shields, from the first one to the last one, were shattered even faster than when they were stacked. Yari's, who was a genius in spell engraving that even the owner of the Radiance Tower felt inferior to, did not have enough reaction speed to deal with Kelowna's Shinryu, who could be used as a mobile cannon from afar and could hold his own at close range. The fist directly landed on Yari's face, the face of the Thunder Tower owner. Yari's face instantly twisted into a spiral pattern. After withstanding the force of the impact, his body directly crashed into the wall behind him. Boom, boom, boom. With one punch, Yari's was directly hit by Kelowna's Shinryu and broke through all the walls of the Magician Association's tower from the other side. He directly crashed into the barrier on the other side. Awesome. Just one word. It was like eating a ginseng fruit. At this time, Kelowna's Shinryu had temporarily forgotten the appearance of a certain profiteer from his mind. He only wanted to have a carefree and unrestrained battle. The office of the Thunder Tower owner had been directly destroyed. The 200th floor of the Magician Association had also been directly destroyed. Regarding this, the owner of the Radiance Tower, who was already regretting his words just now, reluctantly smiled. As expected of Teacher, it seemed that after this, he would have to develop a few more products to sell at this time. In front of the barrier on the other side, Yari's, who had crashed here, did not fall down. His body, or rather, the body of the Thunder Tower owner, twitched for a while, and his sunken face slowly recovered like a balloon. After that, in the 200th floor of the Magician Association that had been destroyed, he looked at Kelowna's Shinryu and loosened the muscles on his neck. As expected of the Shinryu of the East, after so many years, the power of your fist has not weakened at all. Yo, you're quite tough. Long Shiraw sneered and walked slowly on the ruins of the 200th floor. You haven't finished warming up. Don't be too weak. Yaris suddenly said coldly, you're still as strong as before. In other words, you don't seem to have improved in all these years. In other words, your power has been fixed from the beginning, and there is no possibility of growth. Huh. Long Shiraw looked sideways and sized up Yaris. Actually, he had been lenient with his previous punch. If it wasn't for the fact that this was the body of the Thunder Tower owner, he would have been more violent. Actually, you shouldn't have left the land of the East. Yaris chuckled. Although I haven't found a way to kill Shinryu in Kelowna's land, I already have a plan outside of Kelowna. The Tower Master of the Radiance Tower suddenly had an ominous premonition when he saw the look in Yari's eyes. The sky was gloomy, but the weather in the inhuman domain should be under the control of the system he had built. Suddenly, a huge fissure appeared in the sky above the headquarters of the Magician Association in the inhuman domain. Chapter 1366. Everything felt like a dream. For the third lady of the Zhong family, ever since she became a vampire, the rest of her life was like a dream. Why, Elizabeth, let's go back. Those people should be fine. She was still trying to persuade the little vampire girl. Why, Elizabeth, who was the only person she could rely on at the moment, who was not very reliable. After the Golden Dragon's attack and the clan castle was destroyed, she and Elizabeth stayed in the farm, together with most of the vampires of the Tordo clan, and settled down temporarily. After dinner, the little vampire girl, who was worried too much about Loachio who fell into the Lost Rift, decided to return. Of course, with her excellent telepathy, it was not difficult for her to avoid the patrols of the clan. You've been here for more than an hour. Looking at the little vampire girl who looked like she would be blown away by the wind at any time, but still insisted on waiting at the edge of the cliff, Zhong Luoyue felt a little heartache. Although she saw her relationship with Elizabeth as an investment, it was obvious that in the process of investing, she had to put her heart and soul into it to make this relationship real and have something to rely on, to feel it. I'm fine. The little vampire girl shook her head and forced a smile. After all, I'm still a vampire. I won't catch a cold. It was almost a joke, but Zhong Luoyue still smiled and put her hands on Elizabeth's shoulders. The little vampire girl's height was just up to her chest. Of course, she was a tall person. Instead of saying that she was her guide on the path to becoming an inhuman, she was more like a little sister. The three heroes of the Zhong family, 2 dragons and 1 phoenix. For Zhong Luoyue, having a little sister was something that she could not imagine. In the aristocratic families, there were many people who would call themselves little sisters, but there were only a few who were worth investing in. Speaking of which, do you know about the Lost Rift, Elizabeth? Zhong Luoyue suddenly asked. Actually, she just wanted to ease the atmosphere. I'm not sure. Elizabeth shook her head. I spend most of my time in the modern world. I entered the inhuman domain several times, but I only stayed for a short period of time. Do you know anything? Zhong Luoyue smiled and said, I don't know much. In fact, I just inquired about it from the people in Toraidu. After all, I'm good at interpersonal relationships. What do they say? Elizabeth asked hurriedly. Apparently, she was not interested in Zhong Liue's social skills. I don't know the details, but it seems that the Torito clan once attacked the bottom of the crack about 60 years ago, but it seems that they suffered heavy losses at that time. After that, the matter of this rift became a topic that the vampires in the clan avoided to talk about. I want to sense it again. Hearing this, Elizabeth took a deep breath and extended her mind to the bottom of the crack. Seeing this, the third young mistress of the Zhong family could only help this vampire girl keep a lookout for her surroundings. Even so, she did not think that she could handle any clan's vampires or other dangers. But she told herself that this was what she needed to do. There seems to be a person there. Unexpectedly, the little girl suddenly opened her eyes and pointed at the crack. But it was dark below, and Zhong Luoyue could not see anything at all. It's below, very close, blocked by a stone. It's a platform that can accommodate several people, Elizabeth said, and suddenly opened the small wings behind her back. She carried Zhong Luoyue and flew toward the direction she pointed at. It was about 20 meters away from the edge of the cliff, where there was a big rock blocking the way. There was no accident in the process, and they easily stepped on the hidden stone platform. Then, they saw a golden-haired young man in a white robe. His eyes were closed, and he was holding a long magic wand in his hand. He was standing straight and motionless. This person, what's wrong with him? The third daughter of the Zhong family could not help but ask. She carefully approached. When a huge crack appeared in the sky above the Magicians Association headquarters, the area within a radius of dozens of kilometers began to shake. First, it was the ground. Then, it seemed like the air became unstable. The non-humans and the magicians of the association who were sniping the strange creatures subconsciously observed the huge crack. It was pitch black, and it looked like a giant mouth that was going to swallow everything, causing people to feel fear. After that, a figure began to step out from the crack. After the first figure appeared, several more figures stepped out from the crack, one after another. Finally, when the seventh figure appeared, it seemed that no one would come out from the crack anymore. Long Shirua frowned. The people in front of her were all wearing silver-gray robes, and their faces were all wearing white masks with black patterns. However, the patterns on the masks were all different. Shinryu, who did not feel anything about these patterns, only tilted his head and looked at them. However, after the master of the Radiance Tower saw them, he seemed to have thought of something. He could not help but whisper, "The moon, the Grim Reaper, the Hangman, the Hermit, the Lover, the Emperor, the Star, the Tarot." Hearing Hui Yao's voice, Long Shua turned around and frowned. "Little brat, where did these people come from?" The master of the Radiance Tower looked at Yaris, who was occupying the body of the master of the Thunder Tower, and said seriously, "About a few hundred years ago, there was a rumor that there was a secret place in the modern world. It was similar to an association. It had 26 powerful seats, and they were named after the big arcana and little arcana of the tarot cards. This association is very secretive, but at the same time, it reaches out to various fields in the dark. The true intention of this association is very difficult to define, but its name has been circulating for some time. The Michael Club, the name of this association. The Michael Club." Long Shirua frowned. "So it's this group of people." Speaking of the Michael Club, Shinryu of Kelowna was not completely ignorant. During the Dragon Vein incident last year, the orphan of the Shangliu family who was expelled from Kelowna was inextricably linked to the Michael Club. However, that guy was now trapped in the spirit vein that had returned to its original state and was thinking about life. Before Long Shirua went to Mount Tai, she would occasionally visit him and learn about the Michael Club from that guy. In fact, because Kelowna had the Shinryu, other than the border areas of Kelowna, there were some people who were secretly operating in the dark. Basically, groups with a little bit of influence would categorize Kelowna as a forbidden area. Of course, purely activities between human countries were not included in this category. Of course, this was only a rule between inhumans or transcendents. The activities of human countries were not regulated by these unspoken rules for the time being. Otherwise, given the style of some foreign countries who often courted death by secretly operating in Kelowna with ships, aircrafts, and other tools, the Shinryu would probably have swept the entire world over and over again. Among the groups that followed the rules, there was obviously this secret association, the Michael Club. However, if Long Shirua were to say that these people were really so stable, it was even less likely to be believable than a certain treacherous merchant group suddenly shutting down all transactions and saying that they were going to live in seclusion with her. Therefore, she was not at all surprised that these groups were secretly researching how to deal with her. On the contrary, it was strange that they were not researching. So, this Yari's guy seems to have been in cahoots with the Michael Club for a long time. Looking at the slowly descending 7 out of the 26 seats, the Shinryu of Kelowna tilted his head. Although he did not have the land of Kelowna, which was an infinite power bank, under his feet, his current battery was about 91%. Not afraid. This question was quickly answered, because Yaris, who was currently occupying the body of the Thunder Tower Master, chuckled lightly and slowly took out a white mask with black stripes on it, putting it on his face. This is the picture of the magician from the Great Arcana card. The Radiance Tower Master suddenly became astonished. After being astonished, he said, "So that's how it is? Mr. Yaris, it seems that you, or your association, have been plotting this attack on the association for a long time?" "No." The magician Yaris shook his head. "You should know my personality. Although the plot has always been there, this action was just a spur of the moment. After all, I'm a person who will not hesitate to seize the opportunity when I see it. I rather hate constant scheming, because too many schemes will eventually fail due to inexplicable changes. I feel that this opportunity is very good. After all, I have successfully occupied the body of the Thunder Tower. Of course, if this Shinryu did not appear, the results of this opportunity would have been maximized. This proves that when you went out today, you definitely did not look at the almanac." Long Shiruo sneered. "Speaking of which, I also have a debt that I did not settle with you last year. It just so happens that today we will settle it together." At this moment, the entire Magician Association's tower began to shake along with the increase in the power of the Shinryu of Kelowna. Seeing this, the Radiance Tower Master could not help but twitch the corner of his mouth. He opened his mouth, but in the end he swallowed it back down. "Make a big fuss." He was the one who said it. At this moment, the continuously increasing power of the Shinryu of Kelowna made the Inhumans and magicians at the bottom of the tower all become frightened. The gravel on the ground was like a drizzle that flowed backwards, continuously flowing into the sky. They were not creatures of Kelowna, so from the bottom of their hearts, they could not feel respect for this ancient belief, but from the bottom of their hearts, they could feel fear. The magician, at this moment, won the 7 seats that descended from the crack. The one that represented the Emperor of the Big Arcana card suddenly said in a deep voice, "The magician, you did not mention that we would encounter the Kelowna of Shinryu in this action." The magician Yaris said irresponsibly, "Because I did not know beforehand. Naturally, there was no need to report. But since you all have descended, you don't plan on going back like this, right? I don't care. If you all want to leave, I will definitely leave too. After all, I am the only one left. No matter what, I will not be able to deal with this troublesome Shinryu." "What plan do you have?" The magician, another lover of the Big Arcana card, suddenly asked in a low voice. "The operating system of the Inhuman territory has reached its limit in the past few years. The unstable situation in the territory has been increasing." The magician Yaris quickly said, "According to my calculations, the system of the Radiance is already unable to cope with the increasing number of Inhumans in the territory. Do you still remember how we thought when we were researching how to deal with the Shinryu?" "You mean?" The star of the Big Arcana card suddenly lowered his voice. Everyone knew that the Dragon God could not be killed, but it seemed that this was only within the borders of Kelowna. Because of this, Kelowna had a transcendent status in the world of the Inhumans. Even though there had been many invasions between countries, the Inhumans had never dared to set foot in it. The Shinryu of Kelowna could not be killed within Kelowna because they could not cut off the continuous supply of power to the Shinryu from the land of Kelowna. But once the Shinryu left Kelowna, it was equivalent to losing this support. Even though the Shinryu who had lost its support was still one of the strongest forces in the world, but it was no longer an immortal body. Once the explosion of power reached the critical point of the world's space, it might be a way to kill the Shinryu of Kelowna who had lost its support. Even if the Shinryu of Kelowna would be reborn within the borders of Kelowna after his death, it would be decades or even centuries later. This amount of time was enough for many things to be done. How about it? I don't have much time to consider. The magician, Yaris, raised his voice. It wasn't that he wanted to force the others to make a decision, but if they couldn't work together, not to mention killing the Shinryu, even dealing with the current longshoreman would be extremely difficult. Killing the Shinryu, this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The unstable, inhuman space, and a Shinryu who had left Kelowna seemed to have come together because of this choice. Facing the magician's crazy suggestion, the seven of them were obviously moved. Kelowna had always been an area that the club couldn't reach. If the club couldn't reach the borders of Kelowna, then the club would never be able to do what it needed to do. Finally, the silent member of the big Akana card with the tag, the Hangman, suddenly opened his mouth. The true dragon of the East. As his voice fell, Longshaw snorted coldly and raised her head. Don't use such a half-dead tone. Also, don't bother with the introductions. If you want to fight, just fight. I'm sorry to offend you here. The Shinryu of the East. The Hangman surprised Yaris. The attack on the Magicians Association this time wasn't an action of the club. It was a private action of the magician. We won't be providing any support to the magician for the time being. This will be a personal matter between you all. What? What did you say? Longshaw couldn't help but be startled. Yaris was also silent. He seemed to have fallen into some sort of sluggish state because of the Hangman, his words. However, after saying this, the Hangman took the lead and returned to the crack, disappearing without a trace. He didn't say anything else, and it was so straightforward that people couldn't make heads or tails of it. After that, the other 6 chiefs also rushed into the crack without saying a word. But in an instant, the torn sky returned to its original state, as if it had never happened. Jun Jun, the real dragon of the godly land, was dumbfounded by what he saw. What were these guys here for to sightsee in a group? Why did we leave? Even though the magician's suggestion is extreme, it's also very feasible. If we can detonate the inhuman territory, even if the Shinryu of Kelowna can survive, he would still be severely injured. Even though it's a pity to detonate the inhuman territory, it's still worth it. On the other side of the crack was a pitch-black forest. The Hangman looked at the crack that was gradually disappearing and said in a low voice, "This is the fool's decision. I'm just carrying out his decision. Of course, you can also choose to go back and help the magician. In fact, the fool didn't require you to agree to this decision." The fool? The Emperor was stunned. But in the previous discussion, the one who agreed to help the magician was also the fool. Why? I think it's because he received an instant message from the sun. I don't know what exactly they talked about. The sun. Gong Sun. The lover was deep in thought. The crack that connected this place to the Magicians Association headquarters finally disappeared. Chapter 1367. Modern world, south of Italy, near Naples, outside the ruins of the ancient city of Pompeii. The coordinates representing the inhuman domain slowly disappeared, and 2 figures walked out of the coordinates, Kaloya and the mithril tower master of the Secret Arts Tower. They seemed to be chatting. Speaking of which, I haven't been here for almost 80 years. Kaloya made a gesture of looking into the distance. It's been so long. By the way, do you really send people here to maintain the seal every year? The mithril tower master said indifferently. I come here once a year. Kaloya couldn't help but smile awkwardly. Then he laughed and patted the mithril tower master's shoulder. Then let's go. I hope that Bailey's 6th sense is wrong. I really don't want to find any so-called clues here. Of course, I don't mind if there is. The mithril tower master didn't say anything but nodded. The seals were stacked on top of each other, completely sealing the original battlefield under the ancient city. And to reach the battlefield, they needed to open the seals one by one. It would not be an easy job. They quietly walked into the ancient city. Since the ancient city was excavated, it had become a famous tourist attraction. But it was only in the first few years. Now, there were fewer and fewer tourists who were willing to explore the ancient city. Soon after, they disappeared at the entrance of a small tower. In human domain, at the end of the tower of the Magician Association, Shinryu of Kelowna, who was caught off guard by the sudden departure of the 7 seats of the Michael Club, opened his mouth. He wanted to go through the crack to find trouble, if it wasn't for Yaris, who had the highest priority. I told you, you didn't look at the almanac when you went out today. Shinryu of Kelowna mocked at this time. Look, even your companions don't seem to want to help you, a pig teammate, and leave you alone to die. Shinryu kept cracking his fingers. At this time, he looked more like the villain. Don't you care about Lei Ting's life? Hui Yao. Facing this situation where he was left behind, Yaris wasn't angry at all. Instead, he was rather calm. Just as he said, all 7 seats were here. Including him, all 8 seats would have to work together and detonate their inhuman domain to kill Shinryu, who had lost all support. But if they couldn't work together, then dealing with Shinryu alone would be a hellish task. Yaris prepared to leave this place. The 7 chiefs had already left, and as he had said, he would not stay behind to deal with it alone. However, Long Shura clearly didn't intend to give the former First Tower Master any chance to escape. Her figure flashed, and Kelowna, who was used to being straightforward, threw a punch at Long Shura. I'm not familiar with that old man. That why I didn't care. When her fist landed on Yaris' face again, he heard Long Shura's tone that sounded more like a villain's tone. With this punch, let alone a magician like Magician, even an agile warrior like Werewolf would not be able to dodge it easily. Even someone like Kaloya would have to take it head-on. The Thunder Tower Master's body was blasted away like a cannonball, and he crashed into the high tower of the association. After crashing through the high tower, his momentum didn't weaken much. In the end, he fell into the square below. The square was shattered, and a huge dust storm rose to half the height of the high tower. Seeing this, the expression on the Tower Master's face changed slightly. However, Longshaw didn't have the time to look at the subtle expression on the Tower Master's face. Before the dust storm dissipated, she had already rushed to the ground. No one could see what happened in the dust storm. The only thing they could do was to listen to the violent roars and the tremors on the ground. The Tower Master couldn't help but sigh and shake his head. Then he waved his wand. In front of him, a cocoon of light that was as tall as 2 people slowly appeared. When the cocoon of light broke open, the people who appeared in front of the Tower Master were Scarlet Flame and another Tower Master who were locked up in the small black room earlier. Damn old bastard. You made me enter the small black room too. Don't even think about getting on my bed for a year. Get lost. Bucket waist carrot leg. I must have been blind to get on your bed back then. Cough cough, both of you. Let's put this topic aside first. The Tower Master coughed lightly and interrupted the quarreling Tower Master and his wife in the small black room. The Tower Master of the Crimson Blaze Tower first frowned, then looked around. When he saw the current situation, he suddenly opened his mouth, and then his whole body seemed to tremble when he saw the golden figure in the churning dust. Shinryu from the east. The Scarlet Flame Tower Master roared, "Shameless thief! Compensate me for my golden apple. Get lost. You're still holding a grudge for a few yuan per kilogram of junk. I've never seen such a stingy guy. Stingy man's size is short." In the process of beating up Yaris, Longshaw didn't forget to turn around and roar. She then punched out. The fist energy violently rushed over the Scarlet Flame Tower Master's head and exploded a part of the high tower. The Tower Master's brows twitched. As for the Scarlet Flame Tower Master, his hair was standing straight from the wind of the fist. At this moment, the Scarlet Flame Tower Master suddenly shivered. He saw his wife staring at him with a dumbstruck expression and suddenly became quiet. I killed this evil dragon. Boom! Another fist wind blew over, and the Scarlet Flame Tower Master's straight hair instantly tilted to the left. His fingers trembled. I killed Boom. At this moment, there was another gap in the high tower behind him, like a cucumber that was bitten a few times. The Scarlet Flame Tower Master suddenly blew his beard and glared. Today's weather is really good. The clouds and wind were light. The air became quiet again. At this moment, the Tower Master coughed and broke the silence. Hui Yao, what exactly happened here? Why? Cough, cough. The Tower Master said sternly, "It's like this. Yari's attacked, and now he's occupied Lei Ting's body." Hui Yao briefly explained what happened and then hurriedly said, "I'm now in a projection state, so I can't take care of everything. Yari's is very cunning. I hope you, especially Scarlet Flame, can focus on your personal matters first." The Scarlet Flame Tower Master said with a bitter expression. This evil. Shinryu is enough. What else do you need us to do? Hui Yao said solemnly. Let Yari's escape during the chaos. My old Kelowna's Shinryu may not be able to guard against Yari's escape. All right, the Scarlet Flame Tower Master snorted coldly. I'll do it for your sake. After saying that, the Scarlet Flame Tower Master immediately put his palms together, and the various tactic matrices that were engraved in his body flickered nonstop. The temperature in the air began to rise instantly, and in just a moment, a layer of raging flames directly attached to the surface of the barrier released by the high tower. On the other side, the Tower Master of the Arctic Tower also waved his wand, and dense snowflakes began to fall around the high tower, completing a kind of arrangement. At this moment, the three Tower Masters began to observe the situation of the battle, or rather, this was a one-sided beating. The dust that was stirred up gradually dispersed, and on the square of the association, the Inhumans and magicians were lying everywhere, and they were seeing stars. It was obvious that they were unable to get up due to the impact of the Shinryu's leaked power. It seems like it's over, Hui Yao muttered. Hui Yao muttered to himself as he looked at the level of destruction around him. He thought to himself that this was still acceptable. At this moment, in a big pit in the square, Kelowna's Shinryu lifted the Thunder Tower Master up by his collar. The Thunder Tower Master's body seemed to have lost the support of his skeleton, and he hung down limply. Hui Yao descended forward, and his projection disappeared before he reappeared next to Long Shiraw. It was as though he had teleported. He whispered, Master, don't worry, he's not dead. Long Shiraw waved her hand, and then she said in a strange tone, but I don't know why, but as I beat him up, I keep feeling that something is not right. Upon hearing that, Hui Yao frowned subconsciously before he looked at the Thunder Tower Master. He saw the other party opening his eyes with great difficulty. His lips moved slightly, and his voice was barely discernible. Tower Master, be careful. Yari's is back. He's really Thunder. Long Shiraw blinked her eyes. She loosened her grip on the Thunder Tower Master, and the Thunder Tower Master fell to the ground. Hui Yao quickly went forward to check on him. Although the Thunder Tower Master's aura was weak, he could still be saved. He was relieved. I was wondering why it felt wrong. Long Shiraw frowned, and then she tilted her head. She extended her finger, and a ray of golden light shot out from the tip of her finger. The golden light directly pierced through a tilted stone slab and hit a piece of wriggling meat behind the stone slab. The meat was vaporized immediately. Upon seeing that, Kelowna's Shinryu frowned. That guy's aura disappeared again. Master, be careful. Yari's is very good at spiritual magic. He might have moved away. Hui Yao stood up again. Long Shiraw closed her eyes and began to sense Yari's presence with her powerful intuition. In the darkness of her eyes, the light that represented Yari's aura suddenly lit up. Just when she thought that she had locked onto Yari's, another light spot lit up. Then dozens, hundreds, even the light spots that represented Yari's lit up at the same time. Long Shiraw suddenly opened her eyes. She saw that there were a lot of small pieces of meat around her. They were wriggling like worms. Those chunks of flesh were the body parts that fell from Prometheus when the Inhumans and Magus retaliated and slaughtered them. He split his consciousness. Long Shiraw frowned. There were too many pieces of meat that fell from Prometheus. It was obviously unrealistic to destroy them one by one. What a cunning old fox. Kid, why don't I burn this place down? The Tower Master could not help but smile bitterly. If someone burned down your house, would you be happy? I'm just saying, don't take it seriously. As soon as he finished speaking, the pieces of meat suddenly jumped from the ground and stuck to Long Shiraw and Hui Yao. However, before these pieces of meat could get close to Shinryu, they were directly destroyed by the Shinryu's power. Hui Yao also had a defensive shield around him, so it was not a big deal. However, they were too annoying. It was as if they had fallen into an ant's nest and were being stared at by thousands of ants. Hui Yao. At this moment, the Tower Master of the Crimson Blaze Tower in the sky shouted, "To your left." The Tower Master of the Radiance Tower and Shinryu looked over at the same time and were shocked. In the square, The Inhumans and the magicians of the association fell to the ground one after another. They were tied up by something and were struggling helplessly at this moment. Not only that, the cell tissues that Yari's consciousness was attached to began to climb up the bodies of these Inhumans. The cell tissues began to drill into their bodies and then grew wildly in their bodies. After a shrill scream, the body of one of the Inhumans exploded, leaving behind only a piece of biological tissue that had the blood vessels of a human body and was bloating like a sapling. It began to expand wildly. The wriggling cell tissues in the surroundings began to gather crazily toward this tree of flesh. They climbed on top of it and kept fusing with it. In just a few moments, this thing had grown to a height of 30 meters. Its skin had become sturdy, and its trunk had absorbed a large number of non-humans and magicians. At this moment, Longshaw suddenly waved her hand and directly cut off a thin strand in the air that was quietly extending toward her. Seeing this, Huiyao understood everything. Oh no, not only is Yari's consciousness attached to this monster, but he's also using the Inhumans here as the source of his power. If this monster is allowed to continue growing, I'm afraid all the Inhumans and magicians who are absorbed by it will die because their power will be sucked dry. But if we attack it, we'll hurt them. Faced with such a situation, Longshaw obviously could not say anything like burning everything with fire. Lin Sanjiu stomped on a stone under her feet in annoyance. It was not difficult for her to destroy this strange tree. The difficult part was to reduce it to ashes in one blow and to ensure that the Inhumans and magicians who were absorbed by it were unharmed. It was impossible. If she did not destroy all the cells of this thing, it would only grow back again. Those guys from the Michael Club really created something bad. She could not help but think of the Second Research Institute in the Kelowna administration, which was also a department that liked to research this kind of biological thing. If this Second Research Institute also researched this disgusting thing one day, she would definitely beat them to death. I originally planned to temporarily retreat, but make your choice, Huiyao. Yari's voice sounded from all around. Will you destroy me regardless of the lives of these thousands of Inhumans and magicians? Or will you accept my invitation and become one of my people? At this moment, not only had it absorbed thousands of Inhumans and magicians, but the huge tree of flesh had also climbed up the Union's tower and wrapped itself around the tower. The branches that extended from the tree had even drilled into the tower. Not good. Yari's target is the core of the spell system at the bottom of the tower. The expression of the owner of the Tower of Radiance suddenly changed. What's that? He looked at his teacher, the Shinryu of Kelowna, and said with a serious expression, the device that maintains the stability of this inhuman territory. You can think of it as the core of the spell formation in Kelowna. You're saying that this old fox intends to seize the core of the spell formation? Longshaw was slightly shocked. Teacher, I'll leave these Inhumans and magicians to you. I want to enter the core of the core now. Wait, little. Huiyao, come back. However, the owner of the Radiance Tower had already disappeared. Looking at the air in front of him and the thousands of Inhumans and magicians that had been absorbed, the Shinryu of Kelowna couldn't help but grit his teeth. Why should I save these foreign barbarians? Although he said that, looking at the structure of this tree of flesh, even the Shinryu of Kelowna was at his wit's end. Why not burn them all down? At the cliff of the Toraidu clan, step by step, the third young lady of the Zhong family approached the golden-haired young man who was standing quietly with his eyes closed. When she was about to reach him, she couldn't help but frown. She thought for a moment, then took out a dagger for self-defense. She didn't pull it out, but just used the sheathed dagger to stab at the young man's body. Just as the dagger was about to pierce the young man's shoulder, Elizabeth suddenly grabbed Zhong Liue's wrist. Wait, you. What's wrong? Is there danger? The third young lady couldn't help but be surprised. The vampire girl hurriedly said, My grandpa said that if you encounter a living person who isn't moving and you don't know what's going on, you mustn't touch him. Why? The little girl thought for a moment and said, Grandpa said, if you don't touch him, you'll be able to reach the end. Why are there so many problems? That's what he said. I'm not very clear about it either. Huh? The third young lady couldn't help but be confused, but she still put away the dagger for self-defense. Hashtag, 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 hashtag PS1. Rescued a sect leader, Bougie. Also, yesterday there was a half-mo follower of June MO, serve T cute. PS2. Last time it was 22. Now it's 22 plus 1 plus 3 is equal to 26. PS3. Huh? That's strange. Why'd it become so many? Seeing that there are only 2 days left in this month, I've decided I'll start repaying the debt in March fog. M. Chapter 1368. In addition to the rose nectar, there were several plates of desserts on the coffee table, from cookies to freshly baked cakes and soft mousse. The little butterfly monster was so focused on the live broadcast that she didn't notice this. She was like all the girls in the world who were binge-watching dramas. When she was nervous, she would subconsciously hug the pillow in her arms and reach out to grab the desserts on the plate and stuff them into her mouth. If she was more nervous, the frequency of eating would be faster. Nervousness equals speed of eating. The little butterfly monster was like a hamster eating melon seeds as she quickly ate the cookies and made an ASMR sound. Boss Luo paid more attention to the little butterfly monster than to the live broadcast. She finished another piece, but the little butterfly monster still subconsciously reached for it. Her eyes didn't move away from the screen, but the cookies on the plate were all gone. Seeing this, Boss Luo chuckled and pushed another plate to replace the empty one. The little butterfly monster didn't notice this and grabbed the sweeter macarons this time. She was still eating like a hamster. In fact, she was still worried about Sister Long at the headquarters of the Magician Association. Boss Luo accompanied her and continued to watch the scene on the screen. At this time, facing Yari's problem, Kelowna's Shinryu had her own solution. A simple and violent method that only a person with her strength and height could do. Unable to destroy this growing creature and, at the same time, ensure the safety of the thousands of Inhumans and magicians, Kelowna's Shinryu chose to save as many as she could. It was a simple method. Rush to the strange creature and dig out the Inhumans one by one. Then use Shinryu's power to prevent the threads from touching them and absorbing their strength. That was how this scene came to be. Kelowna's Shinryu pulled out the trapped people's arms and even their heads. Along with the sound of bones cracking, she pulled them out. Be gentle. You can't be gentle. You will never be gentle. Like pulling out radishes, the Inhumans were wrapped in Shinryu's power and thrown to the ground. You can do this? The Crimson Blaze Tower Master and his wife were dumbfounded. At this moment, they moved their jaws, which looked like they were about to loosen up. Then, they chose to do the same. Their speed wasn't as fast as Kelowna's Shinryu, but it wasn't too slow either. Still, even with the help of the True Dragon and the two Tower Masters, it was clear that they would not be able to complete such a huge task in a short period of time with thousands of victims. Most importantly, this strange creature would not do nothing. It counterattacked crazily, no doubt. It made the rescue work more difficult. At this moment, more than 100 humans were successfully rescued. Kelowna's Shinryu's current battery was 82%. Good condition. The Magician Association headquarters, the High Tower. The part of the tower that was buried under the ground was about 50 meters deep. Prometheus's cells were growing in a complicated way, corroding the interior of the High Tower as if it were a creature's body. Muscle fibers and sarcomas could be seen everywhere. Boom, boom, boom. Hundreds and thousands of pieces of meat were twisted together like fried dough twists, and then they crazily hit something, a huge obsidian door. Finally, the obsidian door was successfully broken open, and a fluorescent blue light came out from the inside. The thousands of pieces of meat twisted together and crawled into the door. At this moment, the pieces of meat began to spread out and then turn into lines. They began to twist and turn into a humanoid shape. It looked like a human body with its skin peeled off. The firm and bulging muscle fibers were visible to the naked eye. Step by step, it walked forward. The light blue liquid around them was the pure energy that was so dense that it had already liquefied, Pieces of mithril plates engraved with magic spells floated on the surface of the energy liquid. The whole thing was pieced together into an absolute circle, and in the center was a 5-meter-tall, crystal-like tree. In this crystallized tree, a figure could be vaguely seen in the translucent trunk. It finally stopped under this huge crystal tree. The muscles on its face began to move, and then 2 pure white eyeballs began to form. The eyeballs moved from the inside out, and then pupils appeared. It stared at the figure in the crystal tree. "Stop, Yaris. Teacher." Hui Yao's spiritual avatar also appeared in front of it at this moment. The spiritual avatar, floating in the air, slowly descended and stopped in front of it. "Yaris," Yari said slowly, "I think Tafni doesn't want to see you like this." Yari's eyeballs moved at the same time and looked at Hui Yao. "Tafni is dead. I killed her with my own hands. The thing inside is not my daughter." After saying that, he even sneered. "Hui Yao, after seeing this system, I understand that you and I are the same type of person. Come on, Hui Yao, don't reject me anymore." "Teacher Yaris, I just want to use my own method to explore the ultimate of magic." The owner of the Tower of Glory shook his head. "The ultimate of magic?" Yaris laughed out loud. "Hui Yao, you're still fighting for such a small goal? You really disappoint me. I didn't expect you to care so much about the power mode in this small box. Teacher Yaris, please leave here. Otherwise, for the stability of the inhuman domain, I have to do something to hurt you again." The owner of the Tower of Glory sighed. "I really don't want to fight with you again in front of Tafni. There are only 0 and countless times to start a war." Yari said indifferently, "After you started a war with me, to me, you only have 2 choices, surrender or die. Is it really that important?" Huiyao took a deep breath. "Is it really that important? To the extent that you didn't hesitate to sacrifice your beloved and biological daughter to obtain power?" That's because Yari's gaze was like an abyss, swallowing up all the emotions a human should have. "You haven't experienced the grandeur of this power. Compared to the emotions that bind all my inspiration and soul, those things are more worth having. When you have them, you'll realize that you've already experienced all these things you cherish, or perhaps you're in the process of experiencing them. Perhaps you'll even experience them in a more perfect way." The owner of the Tower of Glory didn't see a trace of what a human should have in his eyes. The owner of the Tower of Glory slowly sighed. "Looking at you, I am more convinced that the war that started back then was not wrong, because the existence of that place has created too many individuals like you, Teacher Yaris." "Ha ha, Hui Yao." Yaris suddenly laughed and said in a mocking tone, "The war 100 years ago. Do you really think that we won? The truth might make you feel despair." The owner of the Tower of Glory subconsciously frowned. At this moment, Yari suddenly spread open his muscular arms. "I will let you experience how insignificant you are. I will let you know, what you have experienced is nothing more than a dream." Yaris was extremely proficient in spiritual-type tactics. Purely spiritual-type tactics even made Hui Yao feel ashamed of his inferiority. Moreover, he was currently just a spiritual-type projection without any defense. The moment Yari spread open his arms, a rainbow-colored radiance surged in his surroundings, as if he had been injected with rainbow-colored auspicious clouds. Countless things charged toward him and passed through his body. However, a huge amount of information was crazily pouring into Hui Yao's consciousness at this moment. It was Yari's life story. Because of the turmoil in the kingdom, the descendant of a noble became an orphan. During the 30 years of being a slave, he experienced all kinds of hardships. In the end, he escaped from the Colosseum and became an adventurer. He spent 10 years doing nothing and finally died in the mouth of a ferocious beast. This was definitely not the life story of Yari's that Hui Yao knew. However, it was so real. It was so real that it seemed as if it had been played out somewhere before. Before he could distinguish it, the second part of Yari's life began to explode madly in his consciousness once again. This time, Yari's was just a salesman in a general labor company. Not only did he have to be scolded by his superior every day, but he also had to face his incessant nagging wife and his rebellious daughter when he returned home. Once again, Yaris was a minister of country. He was respected by thousands of people and was loyal to the kingdom. In the end, he was executed by the suspicious monarch. Once again, he was the world's most outstanding musician. He met the love of his life by chance at the Danube River. They had a very cute daughter. He died at the ripe old age of 90. He had no regrets in his life. He was the seat of the magician of the Michael Club. He sprinkled terror on the entire world. The world needed to be purified. The club cast the purifying flame to every corner. The human civilization was destroyed. Everything returned to the most primitive state. A new order arrived once again. It was a utopian world. Because his spiritual body was unable to accept so much information at once, Hui Yao's spiritual body gradually became unstable. Moreover, he revealed a painful expression. Are these illusions? These are all the lives that I've experienced. At this time, Yari said slowly, different lives in different worlds. In these worlds, you were once my student, or you were just a little boy who lived near my house and delivered newspapers. Or you were just someone who had nothing to do with me. Or even you and I have never met before. Parallel space? Hui Yao endured the mental pain, and his consciousness began to churn wildly. You did it? You used the power of magic to interfere with parallel space? This kind of false proposition is actually possible? Since you believe in magic and also possess the power of magic, why do you still have the illusion that this is a false proposition? Yaris shook his head and said, in front of the true self and the one and only me, how small is the ultimate goal of magic? Hui Yao, I'm sending you a final invitation. Join us. The fool will let you see what you're doing in those different worlds. The Michael Club is an existence that has received the apocalypse. It plays the role of the end of the world in different time and space. End? Are you kidding me? I still have a lot of magic books in my library that I haven't finished reading. Master Yaris. Hui Yao shook his head, trying to expel Yaris' horrible life experience from his consciousness. It was not only Yaris' life, but it also included the world settings of these different lives. It was a huge amount of information. The convergence of knowledge from different worlds could even completely destroy the human brain in this extremely short period of time, right? I know it's hard for you to believe, just like how I felt back then. Yaris shook his head, but after you come into contact with it, you will believe. Believe in its existence without hesitation. A unified existence, Yaris said with great yearning. When all the me and all the worlds are able to do a great thing and complete this great thing, all the me will be unified. All the me will overlap layer by layer and finally become a unique individual. Is this also what the fool told you? He's the only one who obtained the apocalypse, even though I feel that it's like a fraud. But Yari suddenly laughed. Regardless of the truth behind it or not, it's very interesting to do this in itself. Looks like uprooting the Michael Club really needs to be included in the future plan of action. The master of the Radiance Tower resisted the mental pain with great difficulty. His spiritual body began to emit a strong light. At this moment, starting from the edge of the crystal tree, the entire huge system space started to vibrate. The energy liquid in the pool shot out one by one and turned into sharp energy blades that cut toward Yaris. Facing Hui Yao's resistance, Yaris was not flustered. Relying on the powerful regenerative ability of Prometheus, he did not even deliberately resist and allowed the energy blades to attack him. Hui Yao, looks like you haven't experienced the greatness of overlapping lives. Yaris' voice suddenly became incomparably kind. You need to experience more, feel more. Accept it. Accept all of me, Hui Yao. Immediately, several dozens, hundreds of different lives began to attack the master of the Radiance Tower spirit at the same time. His spiritual body even fell into the verge of dispersing in an instant. Why don't we leave this place? In a small cave that sunk into the cliff. After observing for a while, the mysterious white-robed young man in front of her did not make any movements. So the third miss simply made a suggestion. The young vampire girl who was more worried about Big Brother Luacio's safety heard this and nodded in agreement without thinking much. But at this moment, the white-robed young man in front of her showed a painful expression. Not only that, his facial features even began to bleed. I didn't touch him, the third miss emphasized in a low voice. The young vampire girl opened her mouth and moved closer. He looks like he's in pain. It feels like he's experiencing something terrifying. Elizabeth? Jean Luoyue called out subconsciously. The young vampire girl said, I want to help him. It feels like he needs help. But we don't know who he is. Elizabeth, we don't need to. The third miss shook her head. The young vampire girl suddenly said, I'm thinking, Big Brother Luacio and I didn't know each other at that time. But if he didn't help me at that time, what would I be like now? Would I be lost in the disaster of vampires and become a complete blood-sucking monster and lose myself? I don't dare to think about it. So, I think a person in pain would definitely want to get help, just like me at that time. As she spoke, the young vampire girl walked in front of the white-robed young man, stood on her tiptoes, reached out her hands, and held the young man's cheeks. She began to feel with the power of her soul. Chapter 1369. Battery. 73%. The total number of rescued targets was 769. This did not include the results of the 2 Tower Masters. Based on a rough estimation, the number of rescued Inhumans was about a quarter. Naturally, Kelowna Shinryu, who was not good at math, did not like this number very much. It was still too slow. As the number of rescued increased, Shinryu would constantly be reminded that the shield used to protect these Inhumans from being attacked by the silk threads would continuously consume Shinryu's energy. Doesn't this thing have a core or something? Long Shural could not help but frown. Huiyao had been in the Wizard Tower for some time now, and there was no news about him. In fact, Kelowna Shinryu did not know why she stayed here, even though she could have just left. She could not help but sigh as she recalled the scene when she met Huiyao many years ago. What was the reason that she took in this immature, impulsive, and stubborn little brat at that time? Hey, Prophet's here. You're still watching, right? Kelowna Shinryu did not stop talking. At this time, she was still in the process of moving at high speed. One by one, the Inhumans were being pulled out of the Wizard Tower. Kelowna Shinryu did not know if it was subconscious or if she had already thought about it. After muttering this sentence, she could not help but feel a little regretful. Of course, I've been watching over Ms. Long. Is there anything I can help you with? I've been watching over her. As a result of her momentary distraction, the wildly growing tree-shaped Prometheus instantly wrapped around Long Shaw like a big rice dumpling. She struggled with her hands and was already out of danger. You can see the situation inside the Wizard Tower, right? I'm watching too. So this is just a late-night TV series to kill time in front of the Profiteer? The true dragon of the godly land couldn't help having goosebumps all over his body at the thought that he was also a character in the play and was always under the nose of the Profiteer, and that everything he said and did might be seen through by the Profiteer. You don't do anything strange when you peek at things, do you? Strange actions? I don't know what Ms. Long is referring to. That's annoying. Ask. All you know is to ask. Kelowna Shinryu's anger inexplicably soared. Tell me the situation inside the Wizard Tower. Not sure if it was an illusion. She felt that Profiteer's voice was not heard for a long time. Or at least, the pauses outside of the frequency of the previous conversation. Hey, are you still there? Ms. Long, do you want to know the situation inside the Wizard Tower from us? Long Shural paused for a moment. She did not know why, but she felt even more irritated. However, her voice was obviously colder. Don't worry, Long Shural, will never go back on my word. It's just a little bit of information. Are you going to ask for a high price? Ms. Long misunderstood. Luacio's voice was light. I'm just happy that Ms. Long can think of us when you're in trouble. Actually, I'm not hesitating. Happy? This means that Ms. Long's view of us has changed, or she has acknowledged us. Of course, this is something to be happy about. Is that so? The true dragon of the divine land subconsciously flicked her hair, then snorted softly. Don't think that you can lure me into a trap by saying nice things. It's just asking for information. It's the same no matter who you ask. It's just that it's more convenient for you. And it's just information. Don't think that I'll buy anything else. How about this? Ms. Long Boss Luo said softly. How about I open up a special channel for you? From now on, you can get information from us. When the information reaches a certain amount, we will charge you the same amount. What do you think? Can it be simpler? What I mean is that you can sign the bill first and pay when it's about time. You can do that. Kelowna Shinryu couldn't help but open her mouth. Sign the bill? That's right. That's because Miss Long is too precious. Everything about you is priceless to me. So, if it's just this little bit of information, it's really hard for me to charge you a specific amount. That's why I made this compromise. Woo woo woo, a priceless treasure. What nonsense are you talking about? This doesn't violate the shop's trading rules. Consider it as a set meal that I specially made for you. What do you think? Specially made? Special? It's special, meaning? Shinryu's power flowed and instantly diluted the uncontrollable thoughts in Kelowna Shinryu's mind. She took a deep breath and said indifferently, if that's the case, what are you waiting for? Where's the information I want? Also, is there something similar to a core in this thing? If it's Mr. Hui Yao, his current situation is probably in the underground hub space of the association's tower. Like spiritual pollution, hundreds and thousands of lives, as well as the world structure and knowledge behind the different lives, had caused Hui Yao's spirit to fall into a state of near collapse. At this moment, the scattered spiritual bodies were like parsley. They were scattered one by one, but they were trying their best to gather together. Eris walked towards Hui Yao's spiritual body at this time. I really planned to leave like this, but you wanted to keep me. Eris smiled and said, I've said that as long as there's an opportunity, I'll grab it without hesitation. For example, right now. I'm really curious. Teacher Eris. Hui Yao's voice was intermittent at this time, but for some reason, he felt a mysterious force being introduced into his spirit. It was like a beacon that prevented him from getting lost in the sea of information. He still maintained his painful appearance and asked with difficulty, back then, how did you maintain your consciousness in these lives? This is where I'm stronger than you, Eris said indifferently. The owner of Hui Yao Tower took a deep look at Eris. At this moment, his spiritual body completely exploded and turned into a large number of photons, drifting in the air little by little. Eris stretched out his hand and grabbed one of the photons. After a moment of silence, he finally said indifferently, what a useless student. You still have to ask such a simple question. If you can't accept it in one go, then accept it in batches. Shaking his head, Eris slowly walked towards the hub of the entire inhuman domain, the crystal tree embedded in Tofny's body. Gently pressing his palm, whose muscle fibers were wriggling like octopus tentacles on the crystal tree, Eris silently looked at the face of the girl in the crystal tree trunk. I want to see all the sceneries in the world, so I want to be the best magician like Dad. Can you even give up on me? He slowly raised his head, closed his eyes, and said to himself, I have a daughter who is more obedient than you, in another world that is more perfect. Looking at it this way, all the imperfections in this world are also like an imperfect dream. It's just that I'm looking at it from the other world. With a slight force of his palm, a crack suddenly appeared on the crystal tree trunk. There's no need for you to continue existing. Crack! The crack on the crystal instantly expanded. The entire hub space began to shake, and the energy liquid in the pool trembled violently, as if it was resonating with something. Then, Eris suddenly opened the eyeball without an eyelid. It's time to test if my idea of killing the Shinryu Kelowna outside Kelowna is correct. Boom! A loud noise sounded. Something violently broke open the space above the core space. A golden figure fell from the spot where the explosion had occurred. You're 10,000 years too young to kill me. Before Eris could react, a huge force came at him. The moment his vision entered his consciousness and formed an image, Eris's body was directly kicked by the golden figure. The body that was temporarily formed by the cell tissues of Prometheus was instantly kicked to pieces. Thousands of strips of flesh scattered and twisted crazily as if the front ends of the tentacles were torn off. Then they gathered again to form the appearance of muscle fibers without human skin. The moment the eyeball was formed again, Eris's pupils suddenly contracted. I really underestimated you, the Shinryu of the East. Don't. Your trashy praise is really giving me goosebumps. Long Shiro stood in front of the crystal tree and looked at Eris's appearance. She said mercilessly, "You used to look like a dog, but this is more suitable for you, Eris. I don't care about the appearance. Appearance is just the carrier of power." Eris shook his head. "It seems that you're going to give up the lives of the remaining inhuman. That's the wisest choice, but if that's the case, I won't hold back. I think the remaining inhuman should be able to provide me with a good source of power. Of course, to you, they're just irrelevant people, so it's not a pity if they die. You don't have to worry about that." Kelowna Shinryu sneered. I won't let you go today, and the inhuman outside won't die either. I told you, you didn't look at the almanac before you left today." Eris shook his head and sneered, but the sneer on his face collapsed in an instant. Kelowna Shinryu, under the crystal tree, suddenly opened her palm. In the middle of her palm was a gray crystal that looked like a sea urchin and was covered with spikes. It was the size of a date. Kelowna Shinryu even casually tossed the gray crystal in her hand and pinched it. "This thing is very important to you, right? I picked it up when I kicked you just now." Eris's pupils contracted again, and he was silent for a moment. How did you know?" Long Shiro said with disdain. "You're making these broken things seem so mysterious. Actually, they're just leftovers from who knows how many years ago. Can't you tell just by looking at them?" Eris's face fell. Long Shiro shrugged and crushed the gray crystal in her hand with ease. She even opened her palm and blew the powder away. This was the typical action of a villain. Eris's face fell again. The muscle fibers on his body began to fall off bit by bit. They withered instantly after falling off. Like a rapid chain reaction, the Prometheus that had invaded the Association's tower stopped moving in an instant. Outside the tower, the creature that had clung onto half of the tower lost its vitality in an instant and turned into some kind of solid substance. The tower master and his wife, who were still struggling with rescue work outside the tower, casually smashed this solidified giant creature into pieces in an instant. The rest of the victims fell down one after another. Only, in a hub space, there was a piece of sarcomatous tissue that was more than a meter tall that was still alive. Kelowna Shinryu slowly walked over and stretched out a finger. Rays of golden light shot out from the tip of his finger and cut off the huge sarcomatous tissue piece by piece. Obviously, it had lost its high-speed regeneration ability. There was only a hazy light wrapped around its body. When it was attacked, the light would be bright or dark. This was Eris's consciousness, and it was also suffering from the pain of being cut off. Suddenly, the sarcomatous tissue split into two. One part crawled towards Shinryu while the other part retreated. Long Shiro seemed to have predicted this move. She chuckled, and Shinryu's power instantly split into three. Two of the powers wrapped around the sarcomatous tissue that had split into two parts. The third part moved directly behind her. At this moment, a piece of tissue that was as small as a bullet was also wrapped up. Olbi *TCH. Kelowna Shinryu snorted and crushed the two pieces of tissue, one big and one small, before burning them with Shinryu's power. The remaining big lump of sarcomatous tissue was wrapped in a light ball by Shinryu's power and was surging wildly. No matter how strong your will is, you should be in so much pain now, right? Kelowna Shinryu smiled with satisfaction. Do you think I can't do anything to you just by splitting your consciousness? So what? Yari's voice was undulating. Even if you kill me here, Hui Yao's spirit has already been obliterated by me. 1 against 1, you won't be able to save him in the end. You don't have to worry about this. Longshaw said indifferently, Hey, little brat, how long are you going to hide? Are you going to watch the show? Following Shinryu's voice, the photons in the air when the spiritual body of the Radiance Tower's master dissipated started to float again. Then, they gradually gathered together and returned to the state of a spiritual body. Although it didn't look very stable, it obviously didn't look like it was completely defenseless. As expected of teacher, you really have godlike foresight, the Radiance Tower's master said with admiration. I originally planned to wait until the last moment and wait for Yaris to relax before making my move. I didn't expect. What's there to make a fuss about such a small matter? Kelowna Shinryu waved his hand, looking like an expert. Damn, I didn't expect the strategy given by that profiteer to be so useful. Chapter 1370. Radiance. From the hole that Kelowna Shinryu had created, 3 figures rushed out and landed on the mithril floating plate of the energy pool. It was the Crimson Blaze Tower Master and his wife, as well as the Thunder Tower Master, whose face was bruised and nose swollen. He seemed to have woken up from Shinryu's beating. What's the situation now? The Crimson Blaze Tower Master was an impatient person, so he immediately jumped forward. When he saw Long Shiraw, his legs stiffened, but fortunately he did not slip. Yaris has been caught. The Radiance Tower Master pointed to the last lump of flesh that was being enveloped by Shinryu's power. Shinryu's power was probably another type of power that these magicians could not fully understand. They could clearly feel that Yaris was being enveloped by this power, but they could not penetrate it to see what was going on. Thank you for your hard work, Radiance. The Crimson Blaze Tower Master nodded. No, this is all because of Kelowna Shinryu's help. The Radiance Tower Master smiled. This time, Shinryu's success in stopping Yaris' invasion can be said to be the #1 contribution. Crimson Blaze, how about this? Let's just forget about the past. What else could the Crimson Blaze Tower Master say? He could not win, and in this life he had always been one of the best human qualities. However, he had to admit that this time, it was indeed because of Kelowna Shinryu's existence that the Association and most of the Inhumans safely survived the crisis. Being hot-tempered did not mean that he was unreasonable, and this was enough for the Crimson Blaze Tower Master to back down. As for the first Tower Master's attitude, it was obvious that he intended to be a mediator. As long as some people can control their own hands, I am not a calculative person, the Crimson Blaze Tower Master said indifferently. Long Shiraw picked at her ears and even flicked her little finger. The Tower Master of the Crimson Blaze Tower pretended not to see anything. Out of sight, out of mind, he walked straight to the trapped Yaris and stared at him for a long time. He sighed. Yaris, so many years have passed. You shouldn't have come back. Haven't you reflected enough all these years? Are you going to let me go if I'm truly ashamed? Yari's voice was very calm. Then I'm really sorry. I sincerely apologize to you. This time it was my fault. I will reflect on it. The Scarlet Blaze Tower Master, who hadn't expected such an answer, opened his mouth but was unable to say anything. F*CK, this old B** starred. Not only is he sinister, he's also F*King shameless? Long Shiraw opened her mouth and turned to look at the Radiance Tower Master. You little brat. How did you take things too hard that year to become this old fox's disciple? The Radiance Tower Master sighed and said with a complicated expression, Mr. Yaris, he wasn't like this in the past. His passion for magic and the contributions he left behind for magicians can't be erased. He just... Long Shiraw suddenly waved her hand and said dismissively, Fine, I'm not interested. Who plays an RPG game and kills a boss and still cares about the tragic fate behind it and the reason for its corruption? Everyone isn't a child. It's fine as long as it's fun. Everyone is like this. The world has changed. If it was you guys who lost the day, this guy obviously wouldn't care about your feelings. Ha ha ha. True Dragon of the East, I like what you just said. Eris laughed out loud at this moment. Long Shiraw snorted and didn't intend to pay attention to this guy. I've learned. The Radiance Tower Master silently bowed to Kelowna's Shinryu. I'll remember it in my heart. The other Tower Masters felt that the first Tower Master's humble attitude was strange, but they didn't think too much about it. They just thought that it was the first Tower Master's way of communicating. Indeed, it was more reasonable to be on good terms with the terrifying Eastern Shinryu than to be on bad terms with him. Radiance, how do you plan to deal with Yari's? The Arctic Tower Master asked calmly. That year, we abolished Yari's magic, but he still came back. This time, I'm afraid we can't be soft-hearted. Put Yari's. Radiance sighed and said, put him in 0-degree hell. For the time being, we still need to interrogate him. This time, there's the shadow of the mysterious Michael Club. Yari's is also a member of this club. We need to know more about this club. Give me a copy of the information later, Long Shaw suddenly said. The Radiance Tower Master smiled and said, of course, Lord Long, don't worry. Once there's reliable information, I'll inform you immediately. Okay. Long Shaw nodded and said, all right, there's one more thing. Say, Old Thunder, where are you going? While talking, everyone subconsciously looked at the Thunder Tower Master. They saw that the Thunder Tower Master had quietly approached the crystal tree in the center of the hub. Hearing this, not only did the Thunder Tower Master not respond, he even crashed into the crystal tree. At this time, Kelowna's Shinryu grabbed the air, and a golden light turned into a huge dragon claw. It directly grabbed the Thunder Tower Master and pulled him back. Thunder, what are you doing? The Crimson Blaze Tower Master's voice suddenly sank. The Radiance Tower Master frowned and subconsciously looked at his teacher, Kelowna's Shinryu. At this time, Kelowna's Shinryu still had the air of an expert. He said indifferently, you still don't understand? There's still something in this old man's body that hasn't been cleaned up. But I've already checked. He's really Thunder. The Radiance Tower Master frowned. Longshaw shrugged and said, at that time, Yari's consciousness had indeed been transferred and dispersed into those Prometheus cells. However, there was still a small part hidden in Old Thunder's body. Yari's is very sinister. After deceiving you, he used this method as his last chance to turn the tables. Even if he didn't have the chance to turn the tables, he could still safely retreat. So that's how it is. The Radiance Tower Master smiled bitterly and sighed. Mr. Yari's attainments in mental magic are truly beyond my reach. If that's the case, Bo, Shinryu's Master, did you see through it from the beginning and then took advantage of the situation and waited for him to reveal himself in the end? That's really a brilliant method. Even the Crimson Blaze Tower Master and his wife's expression changed a little. As the saying goes, reading a strategy is fun for a while, but it will always be fun for a long time. Kelowna's Shinryu suddenly felt proud, but in the face of the first Tower Master's bright and clear gaze of admiration, even the true dragon's thick skin couldn't help but blush. Anyway, I'll leave this guy to you. I won't care about what happens after that. Longshaw coughed lightly. Kill or interrogate, it's up to you. Just remember to send me a report of that. Something club later. After handing over the Thunder Tower Master and the sarcoma to Hui Yao, Kelowna's Shinryu clapped his hands and broke through the core space, disappearing from the Magician Association's headquarters. My impression of this Eastern evil, Shinryu's Master, has more or less changed. The Crimson Blaze Tower Master shook his head. The harvest of this year's golden apples is pretty good. Hui Yao, send someone to send a few to her later. Don't always let people say that this old man is stingy. Stingy fellow, your size is short. The Arctic Tower Master suddenly laughed delicately. I'm 18 centimeters. Hui Yao smiled as he watched the couple's daily life. At this moment, Yari's and Thunder had completely quieted down. They did not say anything. Yari's had always had a habit. After he failed, he would fall into a state similar to autistic. However, he was not depressed. Instead, he was in an even higher mood as he summarized his failures. He would always reflect on his failures, absorb the experience, and prepare for the next success. However, Hui Yao did not know that Yari's was really autistic at this moment. That's impossible. How did this Shinryu find out that I was hiding something on Thunder? She obviously did not find out at that time. Otherwise, based on her action pattern, she would have taken action at the first moment. What went wrong? Could it be that Kelowna's Shinryu has some kind of special ability to obtain information? Since she knew that the crystal was Prometheus' weakness, she should have attacked it directly from the beginning. What went wrong? Obviously, the Tower Master of Hui Yao did not know what Yaris was thinking. He directly opened the entrance of the so-called zero-degree hell and sent the Sarcoma and the Thunder Tower Master temporarily into it. Then, he turned to the Crimson Blaze Tower Master and said, "I'll have to trouble the two of you to deal with the aftermath here. My original body has not returned yet, but I'll be back soon. Don't worry, we will take care of the house." The Arctic Tower Master smiled. "House? Yes, house." Hui Yao smiled and waved his hand. In the core space, the Crimson Blaze Tower Master and the Arctic Tower Master had been sent out of the tower. Everything that was damaged began to be rebuilt and restored to its original state. He floated to the front of the crystal tree and touched the crack on the trunk. The crack was not repaired. Hui Yao touched the crack and finally sighed. He said in a low voice, "No matter what, I will not let the inhuman territory collapse." Tophany. The place began to dim. Hui Yao turned into a photon, and his spiritual projection disappeared. This place was sealed again. When his spiritual projection returned to his original body, Hui Yao slowly opened his eyes. He woke up. In the cave below the cliff, Third Miss quickly said. At this time, the vampire girl also opened her eyes, but her face was full of fatigue, as if she could collapse at any time. Zhong Luoyue quickly reached out to support her. Hui Yao looked at the two little vampires in front of him. One of them seemed to have not completed her first transformation. "What are your names?" The Radiance Tower Master asked softly. "Are you also from the Toridio clan?" Elizabeth and Zhong Luoyue looked at each other. Third Miss signaled the vampire girl not to reveal too much. Elizabeth understood and said, "We are just temporarily staying here. As for names, it doesn't matter. Since you are fine, we can leave with peace of mind." This vampire girl was very good at doing good deeds without leaving her name. As soon as she said that, the third lady directly supported her and walked out. "Wait a minute, the two of you." The Radiance Tower Master called out. "What do you want?" The third lady looked vigilant. The Radiance Tower Master smiled and said, "Please don't misunderstand. I'm not a bad person. My name is Hui Yao. This time, I met with some trouble. Fortunately, this lady helped me to get out of trouble. I am very grateful." "You are welcome." Elizabeth shook her head. Then, she thought for a while and said, "I think I have heard of this name somewhere." The Radiance Tower Master said casually, "Maybe you have heard of it because I am the Tower Master of the Magician Association's Secretary Tower." The Magician Association. Tower Master. The little girl and the third lady had different reactions. Elizabeth was surprised, but she did not think too much about it. However, the third lady was different. As a successful businessman, she had been constantly absorbing all kinds of knowledge in the inhuman domain since she entered it. Naturally, she also paid attention to the structure of the Magician Association, the largest neutral force in the inhuman domain. She was even more clear about what a Tower Master was. You are the number one person in charge of the association?" Hui Yao did not take the third lady's excitement to heart. He just stared at the vampire girl and said, "I feel a very special power in your body. Are you very good at using spiritual abilities?" The little girl subconsciously said, "Telepathy." "Telepathy?" The Radiance Tower Master was stunned. The little girl nodded and said, "Yes, Brother Luochio said that my power is called telepathy." Luochio. She seemed to have heard this name somewhere before. She remembered that her teacher in Miss Luo Dance seemed to have mentioned this name before. This power. Hui Yao thought for a while and said, "It is somewhat similar to the ability of the Soul Witch. However, it seems to be somewhat different from the Soul Witch's ability. I feel that its development potential seems to be much higher than that of the Soul Witch. However, you don't seem to be very used to using this ability, right?" Elizabeth said, "Yes, I rely on myself to figure it out." This was enough for Hui Yao to know a lot of information. If she relied on herself to figure it out, it meant that she had no support behind her. The first Tower Master of the Secret Arts Tower smiled at this time and said, "I'm very interested in your ability. In my collection, There are also many magic books about spiritual and spiritual abilities, even the development of the soul, which has been studied quite a lot. If you don't mind, are you interested in becoming my student? I want to teach you how to use this power correctly. It was also because of his own shortcomings that spiritual magic was convenient. If the association could have this kind of special power, then they would not be as passive as this time when facing enemies of the same type as Yari's. Although Longshore was his teacher, she would not always be there. When it was time to rely on himself, he could only rely on himself. After this time, it was urgent to put the Michael Society on the enemy list. Before he knew the strength of this society, he had to make preparations in all aspects. Student? The vampire girl opened her mouth, as if she had not yet reacted to this proposal. Don't hesitate, just say yes. At this time, the third Miss hurriedly whispered in the little girl's ear, becoming the student of the association's first Tower Master. Regardless of whether you can learn anything in the end, just this identity alone is enough to cause your identity to change dramatically. There are only benefits and no disadvantages. Elizabeth said, but I feel pretty good now, right? So the third Miss directly used her big move. Silly girl. Women have to constantly improve themselves and enhance their charm and temperament to attract the attention of the man they like. Is that so? Of course. The third Miss looked serious. That's fine. The little girl nodded. Seeing this, the first Tower Master was still quite happy. After all, when he was suffering from Yari's spiritual attack, it was all thanks to this little girl's power that he was relieved. It was also at that moment that he felt the huge potential of this strange power, and his love for talent arose spontaneously. But the reason why this little girl agreed seemed to be to attract the opposite sex. This made the first Tower Master somewhat suspicious. Could it be that his name did not seem to work? That was not right. A few years ago, he had only revealed his intention to recruit students, and the lobby of the association's headquarters was packed to the brim. ########PS. The next chapter will be delayed.